ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Fresh Faced Comics. This is the comic book podcast where a lifelong comic book reader guides his friend through the world of comics for the first time. My name is Jacob Licklider. I am usually the aforementioned newbie. However, this time, I am not the fresh faced. And with me, as always, is the lifelong reader, Joey Morgan.
Jacob, you fucking nailed that. I'm so fucking happy.
And filling our newbie spots is actually two returning guests to the podcast. Both coming from our bonus episode on this content, starting with one Mason Peters.
Hello, everyone. It is so good to be back in Wisconsin. It's so great to see all of you. Man, what a great turnout.
I fucking love you.
And Marcus Cotton.
And the flies have all entered the web.
See,
Oh,
Marcus
yeah.
Marcus did a good bit. Mason,
No,
I'm disappointed in you.
I was
Great bit.
Jacob. I was just too filled with fatherly pride in that moment.
No.
To have a bit.
I wasn't mentioning you, Joey. I was giving shade on Mason, who didn't do a
Hey,
bit. Who
I
said,
did-
Mason crushed it too. You all crushed it. I love you all. I'm so happy that we're all back together. This is the Sandman family. I'm so happy that this is how this exists now. So yeah, for those of you that haven't listened to our was it bonus episode 4 of the podcast? I think it's 4. Which is where we covered the first season of the Sandman Netflix series minus the bonus episode that came out after the series released on Netflix. We all covered that on that podcast. Jacob and I have read the entirety of the Sandman. Jacob actually a little bit more than I have because he has read all the supplemental material and tie-ins and miniseries and all that cool shit. Marcus and Mason, however, are relatively new to the comic side of the Sandman. Marcus, I believe so. Obviously, we've all seen the Netflix series. Marcus, you've also listened to the Audible adaptation. And
Yep.
Mason, I believe, I think you started the Audible one, right?
Yeah, I started, and I think I actually got up to the episode we're covering. Either that or we got or I got 1 or 2 episodes past it.
Okay, cool. And so, but today we're talking about the actual comic of the Sandman. There are so many different Sandmans, and they're all great. But this is the start of the actual series by Neil Gaiman, the Sandman Volume 1, Preludes and Nocturnes. This is issues 1 through 8 of the Sandman. I'm really excited for this. This is for those listening, this is the start of our 3-episode Vertigo block. Episodes 47, 48, and 49 are all Vertigo / DC Black Label comics, whatever you like to consider it nowadays. This is the dark side of DC as it's come to be known, and I'm so excited to talk about this. And also, I'm excited that our way of getting into this is a comic that Jacob has already read.
Yes.
So it's a really cool way to ease back into it for him, but also a way for me to sort of just get him in the right mindset for our following 2 episodes of where we're going. So
Why do I have a feeling the next 2 episodes are going to be even darker than this somehow?
Oh, it's very possible, depending on what your threshold for darkness in storytelling is.
Yes.
But yeah, so non-spoiler section first, as always. Jacob, who would you like to tell us what Sandman Preludes and Nocturnes is about?
I want Mason to do it.
Oh, God. All right, let's do it. Fine. So, I'm pretty sure I also did the description of the TV show as well.
That sounds like you just took a shot before you said that. You're like, fine, let's fucking go. Let's fucking do this.
Okay, I have 10 shots lined up for the course of this. It'll be great. All right, so Sandman. So the first 8 issues we are covers the introduction of the Sandman as a character into this world, his own sort of origin story, the thing that starts him out in the present day world of the comics. And we also get introduced to the main villain of these 8 issues, I would say, in issue 3 or whatever. Again, I'm having a similar problem to what I did with the TV show. Is I'm not sure what's a spoiler because
see, it is kind of hard for something like the Sandman, I guess, because it is so widely known nowadays, and the story hasn't really changed in the various ways that it's been told through different pieces of media. So yeah, I guess that is difficult to decide what is a spoiler and what isn't.
I guess what I'd say is these are the issues that sets up the tone of the world we're going to be playing in, sets up some but not all of the characters we'll be interacting with, and sets up pretty key relationships that we'll be seeing throughout and how people interact with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think actually I want to throw this over to Marcus. What As someone that's experienced like I think pretty much every adapted version of these early issues of Sandman that exist right now, how does the comic differ from what I'd say like a lot of people nowadays would know as the adapted versions from the Audible audio drama and the Netflix live action show? What would you say are like the key differences for those getting into the comic?
I mean, the big difference really, because the Audible is pretty much one for one in terms of adaptation. So really it's the Netflix series that's the most different. And it's just because the Netflix series is updated to be in a contemporary setting. So like, the opening of the story has our title character, the titular Sandman, get imprisoned. In the comic, he's trapped for roughly 80 years. And, so I think most of the story takes place in the 90s, where, as in the Netflix series, he's trapped for over 100 years, so the story can take place in the modern day of the 2020s.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. Yes, yeah, it is mostly that timeline shift. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Like for those that have heard like the Audible version and are like potentially wary about maybe going into the comic, like the Audible version is like a one for one adaptation from this comic. Only
Like,
the
it's full cast and stuff, but it is essentially an audiobook of the comic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very very tiny changes that only if you're like following along with the comic will you be able to tell like what the differences actually are, I would say. But yeah, I guess that covers that. Shall we get into some Twitter questions?
Yes, because we have a lot.
Yes, we do. So, and we actually just got some as I opened up Twitter again to look at these. Okay, let's start off from our friend Rachel at Chelsea Shells. First off, says "Man me a sand?" question mark.
We will man her sand.
Okay, and and actually, the second is the question that she submitted is an actual question. What's the best, least expensive way to collect the Sandman comics?
So there are currently the two least expensive ways to do it are either the 3 omnibuses, um, or so the way we're doing it for the podcast is the original 10 volume release mapping.
Mhm. Yeah.
They have recently been re-released in a series of 5, potentially 6 rather large trade paperbacks, as well as some deluxe hardcover editions. I would say find whichever format you like best, honestly, if you prefer
And at the end of
hardcover.
the day, like depending on like what version, what format you're collecting it in, it's gonna come up, I think, to about the same amount of money no matter what.
Yeah.
If you're buying the 10 original like trade paperback volumes, it probably is going to equal up to like something similar to the first 2 omnis in price. Same goes for those newer trades that they did. Probably what is actually the least expensive way to do it is if you're collecting digitally, getting the trades on Comixology through in a digital format. That's probably the actual like least expensive way to do it, I would say. Um, Otherwise, yeah, if you're going in on like the entire thing, then yeah, you're probably gonna end up spending about the same amount of money no matter what if you're buying like physical copies. So.
Yes. I would also recommend getting this on physical, though, because it is wonderful on physical.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Uh,
Next, our friend Jamie at Jamie_season 7 says, "Are you doing this just so you can get Mason to read it?" That is a lie, sir. No, the idea, honestly, I think I had this idea like when we recorded that bonus episode. I was like, oh man, when we do Sandman on the podcast, we should get the same guests so that we have like sort of like the same sort of connective discussion from when we covered the Netflix series to now. And I'm hoping it's working out okay so far. I like our dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Jamie
hey,
also says,
Jamie,
sorry.
Jamie, I read comics, okay?
Yeah,
I own a whole physical comic,
yeah.
okay?
And just look at
A whole one.
famed Fresh Face Comics episodes like episode 34, All-Star Superman, episode 43, what episode was it? Green Lantern's Secret Origin. Was it 43? I think it was
I
43.
think it was 43.
I
I don't
want to say it was
remember.
that. I wish I could remember the episodes of my own podcast off the top of my head. But yeah,
it was
Honestly, I'll put
43.
it.
You were right.
yeah,
I'll-
go me. Haha. I'm kind of good at this. Jimmy also has another question, another one specifically aimed at you, Mason. Did you enjoy the fun, lighthearted story about people in a diner?
Oh man, I loved it. It was so much fun. The best part was reading it before I went to work at a restaurant. So it was just
Are you
great.
serious?
Yeah, yeah, I did.
That's
Yeah,
fucked up, dude. That's
yeah.
so fucked up.
I don't know. Like, okay, so I guess small spoilers as to how I like ingested the story. Not plot stuff, but like I did listen to the Audible version before I read the comic, so I knew what was gonna happen. But it was entirely different, like seeing a visual version of it.
Yeah.
And just like hearing those and like the one thing I remember like in the diner specifically was just like hearing the sound and like hearing the narration and hearing the way that the characters say the dialogue they're given in my head as I'm reading it.
Yeah.
And that was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Wow. That is such a specific experience you had. Oh my god. I love that. Let's see. Our next set of questions come from our friend Kian at Kian the Quark. It's just 4 tweets reciting the entirety of the lyrics to Mr. Sandman, and I'm not gonna read it out unless someone else wants to. But I mean, it's literally
I would
the whole
avoid it
thing.
because that might end up getting us copyright stricken.
Not if you just read them in a really dull monotone.
Yeah, but I don't think I don't think that's an easy thing to do.
I doubt it. Yeah, that's Kian. We appreciate the question. The question mark. It's
The barrage of tweets, shall we
But
call
the
it?
answer is
Yes.
no.
Yes, yeah. Kian also says, such a shame Neil Gaiman never got to write for Doctor Who once. He's such a good writer. I agree, Kian. Neil Gaiman never did get to write for Doctor Who. It's a shame.
See, okay, so now comics audience, the joke is that Neil Gaiman did in fact write for Doctor Who.
He did it twice.
One of those.
He
Yeah,
wrote
we
what is
really
often
like one of
considered
those.
one of the best episodes of the modern series, and then the one we don't talk about.
Yeah.
That essentially got hijacked from him.
That said, The Doctor's Wife is fantastic. I love that
Yes.
episode so much. Yeah. Let's see. Our next question comes from Josh at Uncut Laddie. Says favorite character. I'm gonna address that to everyone. I think that was specifically to you, Mason, but I'll address that to everyone. Favorite character, and try to keep it just to Preludes and Nocturnes.
Ooh. Death.
Death is quality.
Yeah, I like Death.
Death is great.
She's great.
Anyone else?
Kind
I
of
mean,
thinking about it now, it's kind of going to like my favorite performance in season 1 as well. Lucifer.
Quality. Jacob.
I like Death too much.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think. You know what? Here's the thing, though. My favorite comic book character of all time is John Constantine, and he's here in Volume 1.
He is here.
I think by law I have to say that, but if we're talking about just Sandman original characters, then yeah, probably Death. Yeah. So there's that. Let's see. Next up, let's head over to Discord. A question from our friend Andy. Andrew, Andy. I don't know why I said Andy.
I don't think he goes by Andy.
We were talking about a friend named Andy before this recording, and so when I went to talk about our friend Andrew for the podcast, fuck it, whatever. Andrew asks, which did you all prefer, the Sandman Audible drama or the Netflix series? Jacob?
Oh, that's like asking me to pick a favorite child. I really should have tried to prep for this question. It's been here all day. So if we're just going on the respective adaptations of Preludes and Nocturnes, I think I'm going to have to say Netflix. Because I think it understands the adaptation a little more, whereas the Audible production is ever so slightly limited by being trying to be as close to a straight audiobook as it can be.
But Jacob, does the Netflix show have Martian Manhunter?
No, neither does it have Etrigan, and those are terrible losses.
Exactly. We lost a lot there, and an actual like one-to-one adaptation of John Constantine. So
yes,
there's that. For me personally, it's the Audible version. Marcus.
Yeah, I'm going to say the Audible version too, just like if you want another way to experience the comic. Because I will say this, though, like the Netflix series, just in general, is one of the best adaptations I've ever seen because it truly, I think, understands, what it needed to change, what worked, what didn't, what works on film as opposed to what works in a comic. And I think it, again, just to sum it up, I think it's a masterclass in how to do an adaptation.
And Mason?
Okay, so I guess so again, I've heard like the first 9 or 10 episodes of The Audible, and I've seen all of season 1. That's an interesting question because like I really enjoy brutal storytelling, and I feel like the Audible adaptation captures more of the extremely dark and brutal aspects of some of the stuff that we get here. So I think because of that, I'm definitely more partial to the Audible adaptation. But again, like I love the way that it was adapted for Netflix. I thought it was fantastic.
I agree. Andrew also asks, speaking of adaptations, do you think Sandman would lend itself to a darker animated series a la Invincible or not? I've been thinking about this question a lot today myself. I'm a little conflicted on that. I think that style of series could work for maybe specific stories in the Sandman, but maybe not the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason the Netflix series did its bonus with Dream of a Thousand Cats as animated.
Mm-hmm. Because that's a story I can't see really working in proper live action.
Live action.
You know?
But there are also things that I don't think would necessarily suit animation.
Yeah.
As well.
I mean, genuinely, I think something like Sound of Her Wings may not translate the best to animation.
Yeah.
It's a story about deep human connections, and maybe you might lose a bit of that in the animation process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to pick and choose because, like, one of the things with the Sandman is that it changes artists so much as the run goes on, and everyone has kind of a very distinct art style, and the narrative itself kind of leans into that. So I think it benefits to have some stuff live action and maybe some stuff animated.
Yeah, I agree. I could definitely go for like an animated series like about some of like the one issue stories in this, like Calliope and Dream of a Thousand Cats and Facade, things like that. I think could translate really well into an animated series. But I don't know. Some of them I just can't see translating the best. Mason, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and like the first thing I thought of was like I don't think we really need one right now because I mean we already have 2 full adaptations going of it for like audio, and again like they are doing a little bit of animation for the Netflix show. So I think it just like falls into it depends on the story because I definitely agree. Like I don't know why, but I don't think I could see the cafe story working as well if it was animated.
Yeah, definitely.
Like,
unless you went like super abstract with it, but then I think that would kind of be betraying what hits so hard about the story.
Yeah, I agree because like it's one thing when you're seeing it as a comic because like it's very like distorted and abstract, but like when you see it happening in real life to real people, it's so affecting.
Yeah. Did Mason cut out for anyone else there?
No.
Oh shoot, did I?
Oh, okay. No, that was just me. All right, that's fine. All right, our next Twitter question comes from let's see. Sean Franco at Sean Franco _ says, "This is the only volume of The Sandman that I liked because I thought it was the only one with a character-driven and plot-driven story. I wonder sometimes if that's because it has the strongest connection to the main DC universe, and Gaiman needed that kind of top-down structure. Anyway, Sandman is easily influenced a generation of goth kids in the 90s as much as Vampire the Masquerade and Typo Negative. So I guess my question is the appeal of Sandman purely aesthetic, or is there enough narrative depth to warrant its influence?"
There is enough narrative depth.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here. There's this weird issue that I've noticed people looking at the Sandman, especially after you get sort of past it's something that can happen when you try to read it volume by volume and aren't trying to see it as the entire 75 issues as one big story, which that entire 75 issues, we would never be able to do it as one single episode. That's over 2,000 pages of material to cover. I'd argue that it's this is all Neil Gaiman's treatise on stories, on the world that he's writing in, especially rereading Preludes and Nocturnes for this episode for the first time, really made a lot of his commentary on the AIDS epidemic in particular in these early issues really jump out at me. And just understanding that it's a non-traditional narrative. It's not going to be structured like your 3-act structure. It is a narrative that weaves in and out, that has some things to say, and even if things don't necessarily slot in as easily as you might think, there's a reason they're there. And there isn't a bad issue in the bunch.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, actually. I was thinking about that. The call out that he makes to it being more connected to the DC universe at large, and seeing how it was mentioned that there was more that, like, maybe that top down structure was needed for. I mean, I don't know too much about Sean's personal taste in stories, but I'm wondering how that could be influenced by by that larger, like, DC universe connection here. And I wonder how, like, what makes this volume so different from it, from the rest.
And it's not like this isn't the only one where there are big DC universe connections.
Yeah.
I
mean,
mean,
hell, one could argue that the biggest DC universe connection is in, like, the final arc with certain characters that show up.
And also,
like, in part the final arc happens because of a big DC event.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Which isn't the story itself, but yeah, like it's interesting. But I don't know. I've been thinking about that question a lot today ever since we got it, and I don't know, just interesting. Anyway,
I agree.
Our last set of questions comes from this guy named the Mason 256 at the GD 256. One, if you absolutely had to nitpick one thing, what would you nitpick? Mason, I'm going to toss this question to you.
Okay, so for the comics, I would say, like, I don't know if this is a nitpick necessarily, but it's just, this is the one thing that I do prefer the Audible adaptation over the comic itself, is there's a lot of narration, and I think it works better as, like, someone reading you a story than when it's, like, meant to be a more visual medium of the story. Again, the narration's great, and it does build a great world, but it just, like, I prefer when it's done in the Audible version rather than the comic version, I think. But that's totally, like, my own personal taste, because again, I'm not a big comic person.
Gotcha. Any other nitpicks from the rest of the group here?
I will actually say perhaps the biggest barrier to entry is that the first 5 issues are penciled by one Sam Keith, and Sam Keith's style isn't bad, but it is a style. Like,
Sam Keith is a fucking legend.
Yes, but it's also like, if this is your first comic, like it kind of was mine, it becomes kind of interesting to try to read those first 5 issues.
Yeah. Marcus, any nitpicks from you?
Just one, a very small minor one, but I'll actually save it to when we get to spoilers because it's kind of character stuff, but it relates to the issue Sound and Fury. That's all I'll say right now.
Okay. The second question from this GD256 guy says, do you prefer the comic or one of its adaptations? Mason, I'd like to toss this question to you.
Okay, so, man, this guy asks really good questions. Usually
I think so too. Yeah, he's really good.
So I think that, like, again, this is partially my own bias, because at this point I haven't read as, like, the comic is literally the bit of the Sandman that I've ingested, like, the least of, because I've heard more episodes of the Audible version, and season 1 goes over more than what is in this sections. But, like, right now, I don't know. It's a toss-up between the Audible version and the comic version, because I love the Audible version of the story so much.
Yeah.
Like, I like all 3 of them. I don't know if I would call the comic my favorite version of it yet, but maybe I just need to read more of it.
Interesting. Anyone else commenting on that?
I prefer the comic. I love what Gaiman does from the word go, and it's one of my favorite just general stories of fiction.
Cool. Marcus?
I'm gonna say the Audible version just because I personally like the picture that my mind creates when I'm listening to it over what I'm seeing in the comic.
Interesting. I'm a comic guy myself, but that's pretty apparent. This guy's third question says, "Would you rather see this series be the larger DC canon or its own universe?" Mason, once again, I'd like to toss that to you.
Okay, so to slightly break the mold of like this of this joke we're doing of someone else doing the questions. The reason I asked this is because, like, from what I'm aware, originally, like, the Sandman was meant to be in the DC universe, but then, like, since Black Label, like, it got the Black Label, does that imply that it's its own universe?
That is a question for debate among a lot of Vertigo and Black Label titles.
Okay.
It's still part of the DC universe. It's just what goes on here is not affecting the larger DC universe and vice versa.
Yeah.
I guess, like, a better way to describe this, like, to ask this question would be, like, do you think the story is better because it is DC, or do you think it's, like, just good on its own?
Oh, it's very
Like-
much good on its own. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say.
I would say is that, like, especially when reading the comic, you do have to be aware throughout the entire run, because it only gained the Vertigo label after issue 50. So 2/3 of the story had been told in the DC universe. It's just in its own little corner. But you can, like, even past that, you can tell when things are in the DC universe. Now, I'd argue for adaptation into, like, a Netflix show, taking it away from the larger DC universe and the larger immediate post-Crisis on Infinite Earths DC universe that it's set in is probably for the best. It makes it easier for a general audience when you're, again, adapting it separate from a comic book, which is already kind of just assumed to be part of this larger world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
And like here, can I add one last real quick thing?
Yeah, by all means.
So because I watched the Netflix version first, I experienced the story with no DC connections. So whenever I heard the audible version and the comic, and again, I keep reiterating this, I've only heard like I've only read or like heard like 8 or 9 issues at this point, but like the DC stuff feels a little superfluous. Like it's not necessary to be there.
Yeah, like it doesn't need to be there, but it's there because this comic was conceived as being part of the DC universe, and
Okay.
and that was the whole thing. So, yeah. Before I get to this fourth question here, I'd like to just mention that this tweet was posted 38 minutes ago. It says, "Future Mason, did you remember your dry cleaning?"
Fuck. Damn it. I left it. Fuck. All right. Sorry. I got away from myself.
And then, as a bonus question, which member of the Sandman family are each of you? Mason, I think you have an answer to that, considering you're the one that submitted that question. Any thoughts?
Oh no, I don't have an answer. I just heard someone say it. Like I asked this question mid-recording. I heard someone say it, and I'm like, ooh, that's a good question. I did not think about it at all after that.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess aside from the fact that I've literally played Dream on the channel, I don't know. I guess I am the most emo one here of the four of us.
I mean, okay. This is this. So, are we just casting ourselves as
I don't
which
know.
endless we're most like?
I don't know. I don't know if it's meant to be more like, oh, what role can we play, or like which one are we literally, like personality.
Yeah, that's Mason. Elaborate.
Yeah, I don't know. The person who wrote this question was really vague. I don't know. It's weird. No, just like if the four of us were the members of the family, which one do you think we'd fit the best, like, as the role, I guess?
Well, I think Joey's, at least in terms of the podcast, is obviously Destiny. You have the big book of what's coming.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I guess Okay. Let's go in terms of the podcast then. All right. Okay. So Jacob, who are you then?
That's the thing. I don't know. Here's the thing. I was gonna say Delirium, but I think Mason almost fits Delirium more than
Oh
that.
yeah, Mason's definitely delirium.
Oh, am I delirium?
Yeah,
I don't know what
yeah.
that means, but hell yeah.
You'll know what I mean eventually.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, I guess I don't know, Jacob. You're death.
Trying
And
to
I
bring
don't know.
humanism into the darkest situations.
I don't know. Is Marcus destruction because he never comes to family meetings? I don't know. He's been the one that's been least on the podcast.
This is true, I guess, but I don't think Marcus has seen the horror that he's of the podcast and run away.
True. That's fair. Also, we're spoiling big plot points about later Sandman stuff for those
Yeah.
listening.
It's okay. I don't know what any of this means. It's fine.
Good. So this is the end of our spoiler section. I think this is our longest spoiler section in Fresh Face Comics history.
Non-spoiler section.
Non-spoiler. Fuck me. It's gonna be a long
That's
one.
the end of our spoiler section, everyone.
That's the end.
Everybody!
Goodbye. Be sure to subscribe and rate wherever you be. No, okay, that's the end of our non-spoiler section. I know how to speak. I know how to use words. This is if you haven't read the Sandman, if you're one of those people, if you haven't read the Sandman, go read it. And there are multiple
There will be multiple links to, I think, the different ways you can collect it.
Yeah. I'm sure I will remember to do that in 2 weeks time from when we're recording this.
2 weeks or so. Yeah,
I can remember that. Sure. We'll hope that I can do that. All right. But read the Sandman because it's fucking great. And also, if you want to find out what we're covering next time on the podcast, that will also be in the description below. Or you could just skip to the end of the episode if you don't want to hear spoilers. Or
we will have 3 whole guesses because we have 2 guests on what's coming next.
That's true. Oh, that's gonna be fun. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. So yeah, in the meantime, we will also have social and Linktree links to the fine people on this podcast, not including myself, of course, in the description below. I'm really going off the rails here. We're gonna get into our spoiler section now. So if you haven't read the Sandman, go away or stay anyway, because viewership is always helpful.
Always helpful.
Yeah. So let's
you know what, the one thing I do want as we start this spoiler section is before we even really get into any plot points, I want to know what Marcus and Mason thought of Dave McKean's stunning covers.
So they are all gorgeous. Like, I think I'll point out my favorite one when we get there. It's kind of tough to tell, but I think personally, even though they're all abstract to a degree, I like the ones that more strongly tie into what the issue is about than just the more out there ones. Like, I think off the top of my head, the cover for Passengers is probably my least favorite.
Okay. I mean, McKean's whole style is just completely abstract,
and none of these are 2D covers. These were
etched on wood, I believe.
Yeah, these are all large wood cuts that he did, at least for the first.
I fucking love Dave McKean so much.
He did not need to go that hard.
It's no wonder why he rarely ever does interiors, but when he does interiors, he goes so hard. Also worth noting that Dave McKean is, I think, mostly retired these days, right? But he came out of retirement to do the Sandman credits for the Netflix series.
Yes,
which is
he did.
Really cool. Yeah, he's awesome. Also, just his Hellblazer issues that he did the interiors for. No, he did. I think he only did 1 issue of the interiors. But he's done a couple other covers over the years, and they're fantastic. I love those. And also, Serious House and Serious Earth is one of the freakiest Batman stories ever just because of his art. So that's neither here nor there. Let's get into issue 1 of the Sandman.
Wait, Mason didn't say
Mason,
it.
yes! Oh my god, I'm so far gone already this episode. Mason, go ahead.
I agree.
Thank you.
No, I'm joking. So like I like the art style for it. It's very distinctive, like the way that the formatting works with the like different photos and like just the way that it like meshes together, and like it feels so Sandman, and like it's just really impressive as to how quickly they were able to just find a style that worked so well.
Totally. Oh man. I mean, there is of course the Neil Gaiman theory that these people actually exist, and so they had a distinctive style. They had something to work off of for these covers and the interiors.
Yes.
It's a really fun idea that Neil Gaiman and a couple other people that have worked on the comic have claimed to have actually met people from this comic. So
Yeah,
that's
I
cool.
mean, I've heard the Alan Moore story and
yeah, how he
about
actually met John Constantine. Yeah, great. It's so fucking nuts. I love it.
because Alan Moore is a wizard, and we do not need to
Alan Moore
question
is a
his
wizard.
greatness.
I
Oh,
believe
great.
he conjured John Constantine into existence.
Wow.
Uh,
So
anyway, so beginning
now,
proper
now
with
Sandman issue 1. What's it called? Oh my god.
Sleep of the Just.
Sleep of the Just. I should know that because it's named after an Elvis Costello song. Anyway, which is a great song. You should listen to that. I'm gonna stop trying to interject on things. Someone else take away the plot in this one.
Yeah, so we open with. It takes us a while for our titular character to show up, honestly, as we open on June the 6th, 1916, Witchcross, England, where a Dr. John Hathaway is coming to speak with a Mr. Roderick Burgess. And immediately, the layouts are incredibly inconsistent in the absolute best way. Kind of really giving you this this almost Edwardian Victorian sense
I mean,
of existence.
what it's sort of doing is it's like it's portraying a fairly normal scene. It's guy gets out of a car, he walks up to a door, guy answers the door, there's a conversation, but it's the layouts of the pages and the artwork that Sam Keith does that really makes the scene abstract. There's nothing weird about the scene itself, but it's the way that it's portrayed that makes it weird.
Yes. And I
It
mean,
is it is something that does take some getting used to, though. Like in later issues, there were a few instances where I didn't realize until I read to the bottom of the page that I had just read the panels out of order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean like with like 2-page spreads and all that?
Yeah, like sometimes an entire scene will go across both pages, and sometimes it'll go top to bottom. And
Yeah.
yes.
The nature of comics.
And what's interesting that I've always found interesting is these little flashes in between. Essentially, as Burgess basically tells Dr. Hathaway has requested this book, this Magdalene Grimoire, that they are going to be holding a ceremony at the next full moon. And we see 4 people in various states of the world. One hearing a bedtime story, one sleeping with his family, one in the trenches getting ready to go over the top, and one just dreaming of a tall, dark man. His eyes burn like twin stars in her head.
Fucking Neil Gaiman, man.
Yeah.
Just
God,
right away, the way he
it'd
words
be
things.
so hard to not just read Neil Gaiman's prose verbatim.
Oh my god. And
Yeah.
it's
we
fucking
will
beautiful.
resist as much as we can, but we make no promises.
This is true.
And so what Gaiman's doing here so early on is, because this is going to be a story that affects the entire world, we need those anchor points, these 4 anchor points, 3 of which are arguably not important outside of this issue. They they don't contribute. They don't continue. One of them ends up becoming integral for the rest of the entire story, but these are also just 3 people who are about to have their lives completely upended by accident. But in between this, we have a small scene between Roderick Burgess and his son Alex, where we find out quite a bit about who Burgess is, find out how kind of fearful Alex is as a boy, as we are guided then through this ceremony with this coven of mad magicians, taking fairly esoteric uh, fairly esoteric things, A knife from under the hills, and a stick that I stuck through a dead man's eye. A claw ripped from a rat, a name, and the name is lost. I give you the blood from out of my vein, and a feather I pulled from an angel's wings. All to do a summoning, and the summoning happens. The intent is to summon death. Dr. John Hathaway has lost his son in the Great War, and Roderick Burgess just wants immortality. He's a madman who wants immortality. And this is all before we get to the actual title page with our inhuman figure steeped in black, items of power adorning him, trapped in a circle where we get Sleep of the Just. And
It's such a great page. Sam Keith is so good. Like truly, like yeah, you are right. Like the art style does like take some getting used to, but it
is
really,
great art.
Oh yeah, yeah. So such a talented guy. And so yeah, so they did not get what they wanted, but they take Dream anyway. We then see the effect that the taking of Dream has on the world. As those people that we were following, those four flashes that Jacob mentioned, begin to fall asleep and never wake up,
or stay awake and never fall asleep. And it is quite terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way that Keith makes Keith and Gaiman make the passage of time happen quite quickly, because we start to jump through history quite easily.
Mm-hmm. I've heard before that some people have a hard time getting into this first issue because it takes such a long time for any of the characters that we're going to be sticking with for a long time to actually get introduced or at least play a role in the plot. I was curious, throwing this to Mason and Marcus. Did you find that at all, or maybe because you were already familiar with other versions of the story that maybe that wasn't as much an issue here? But how did you feel like reading this first issue in regards to that somewhat common complaint?
Yeah, I didn't even realize that was a complaint, because I think I say this as kind of a classic Doctor Who fan. I love the world building that this issue does.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and like honestly, I would say that I did have a bit of a problem with that when I was watching episode 1 of the Netflix show, because it was taking so long. But like knowing everyone, like to some extent, and just knowing where it's going, this time when I was reading it, I was just kind of like allowing myself to get sucked into the world building. So like when you know what's happening, or like you know what's getting set up, it's much more interesting, I think.
Yeah, and I think because of that, it's an issue that is rewarded, I think, by a reread. And so like like it is kind of helped by hindsight, like when you know where it's going, it can be somewhat more enjoyable. I enjoy it no matter what, because it is fantastic world building, and Gaiman does a fantastic job just sucking you into this world, and beautifully helped by Sam Keith's pencils. Like I love this page that we're coming up on here when you see the passage of time through Dream's eyes, and you see him in that cage that he's trapped in. I absolutely love that.
Yes.
It makes normally mundane events seem really dynamic, and a lot of that is the artwork, and also just Gaiman's wonderful world building.
I do love the very stereotypical like 70s clothing that these people wear, like in each, like in like each of the like 1972, 1978, like 1982, like that's such a 70s outfit he's wearing in the background, like his yellow pinstripe suit with his mutton chops, like.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So essentially what happens is, in the immediate aftermath, Dr. John Hathaway gives us our first hint into the fact that this is going to be a very mature comic, very dark, because we have a suicide.
Yes.
And he's written a confession accusing Roderick Burgess. However, Burgess works his magic, and the suicide letter burns. The police are baffled, and the whirlwind of time begins to pass. The sleepy sickness continues to spread. A man called Ruthven Sykes and Burgess's mistress Ethel Cripps, soon to be Ethel D, steal a dream stone, and we have Alex figuring out that
I think they steal all three things.
They steal all three things. And over the years, by this point we're in the 1930s, uh, we find out that the helm is given to a demon. And this is one of the first points where I need to bring up Todd Klein's wonderful lettering. Wonderfully unique lettering. Klein being one of the first letterers to really do this sort of thing. You see it more in modern comics, where characters will have unique lettering. But we don't know who this demon is. But when they reappear 3 issues down the line, the clue to the reader is paying attention to how the speech bubbles are written and how the letters are stylized.
Yeah.
I mean, I do have to say, I think that is a weakness of the Audible adaptation, because I don't know if it's the same actor, but for this scene, they have a different voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
And also, not just that, but also, like, the story was written to be a comic first and foremost. So changing it to other mediums like that, like, you do lose certain aspects of that. Like, literally, the speech bubbles give hints to our characters and where they're going. You can't necessarily do that on audio drama, or especially not on TV. It's interesting to look at, like, how a story like this is adapted, and a story that was conceived as such a comic booky idea. And how that translates. I don't know. It's cool.
We do. By the time we get to the 1940s, we have people still asleep. Unity Kincaid, in a hushed up scandal, is taken advantage of and gives birth to a baby girl who is adopted that Unity will never know. And the universe realizes something is wrong by this point. And so the Sandman, of course, was conceived to be a revival of a Jack Kirby character called Wesley Dodds.
And here Kirby he is. Look at him. Look at
That's
Wesley
really
Dodds.
Cool.
Wesley Dodds of Night Terrors fame, right, Jacob?
Of Night Terrors fame.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't expecting us to have Wesley Dodds show up in so many things in the same month, but it is happening.
Yeah. Here we are, which is really funny because we're recording this only after Night Terrors #1 came out, and by the time this video comes, or this episode of the podcast comes out, we're going to be we're going to be 2 more weeks of the event. Yeah,
2.
So,
yes.
So I don't know where Wesley Dodds is going yet, but I don't know. Great to see him.
I don't know, but by 1947, Roderick Burgess dies, and his death is a fascinating page. Because it's implied that this madman just succumbs to old age and while facing down Dream of the Endless, who is powerless to do anything. And we continue time with Alex.
That is something I wanted to say too. Interestingly enough, that's the like with the Netflix show, the reason that the timeline of Morpheus's imprisonment is just extended by 20 years is because encephalitis lethargica, I just learned this, the sleepy sickness, was a real thing that happened.
Yeah. Gaiman is going to use illness quite a bit throughout this first arc. And the emergence of illness and how it's often poorly managed, subtly through allegory and metaphor. We'll talk about more of it when we get to the 3rd issue, because that's when it really starts to come into focus. But it is an important theme of these early issues of sort of this reaction to sickness and not properly facing disease, which is there.
Yeah.
But we
also, Neil Gaiman next up introduces his first gay couple into the comic.
Yeah.
In a very subtle way, certainly not as explicit as other versions of the story. It's at its most, you really have to be paying attention to the text because it's literally just the one bubble that says it.
Yeah.
So that Gaiman in a later issue, much later, was like, I need to make this more explicit because my readers apparently don't get it.
Yeah. Just really interesting. I like that.
And you have this idea of, magic fading away. Alex Burgess making the same deal with Dream proposed to his father, but still getting the answer of no. And he ends up essentially going into having parties and people seeking enlightenment throughout the 60s and into the 70s, always ensuring that there's no psychedelics. There's a guard on Dream, and Alex Burgess gets old as more and more of our victims um, pass away. Alex.
I forget, did we get a full look at Roderick Burgess's tombstone earlier? I don't think we did,
Oh,
actually.
we
That
did.
okay, well, I mean, we see it here. I love the line on it, not dead, only sleeping.
Something that then Paul slashes through while slashing. No, Alex slashes through while slashing through his own father's portrait with a knife. Um, Growing old until one night in 1988.
And
Uh,
I just want to say real fast, it's so tragic to like watch this all happen from this kid's perspective. Like have this thing happen to him at like such a young age and just watching it grow up and then like him just watching it over and then like he literally just becomes his father.
Yeah,
Like
becoming
doing
just
like in the
obsessed with
exact
it
same
as he
role that
was.
he did for so long.
Yeah, yeah, it's
And you're like, I don't
really
know,
messed up. Ugh, I
like
love it.
yeah.
But yeah, this in Alex's old age, he makes a mistake. And that's
he's
all
in
it
a
takes.
wheelchair. He slightly turns and ever so slightly disrupts the summoning circle. We have one of the guards reading Stephen King's It,
Excellent
because this is
novel.
the
Highly recommend.
80s. The other reading The Sun, which I would not recommend. Um,
um, but yeah, there's a break in the circle there that was containing Dream, and these two guards that are watching Dream begin to fall asleep, and we get the first actual look at, I think, like what a lot of the like a fair bit of, like the rest of the Sandman will be like. Because I think, yeah, a lot of this first issue isn't really indicative of what the series is as a mission statement, but this is where we really get to see it here, and Gaiman and Keith go out in full force to show what it's like. It's awesome.
yes. Uh, Dream is allowed to escape. He escapes through this guard's dream. Um, they think he might be dead because he collapses and is able to do this to essentially re-enter the dreaming briefly, go through several dreams. Um, One of a man stuck at a costume party dressed as a clown. When it turns out it wasn't a costume party, it was just a party with Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, and John Wayne. Um, he uses this opportunity to change the dream and eat some fried chicken because he is hungry, summon something to wear, and have his revenge.
And
And with
also in those interludes, we see everyone start waking up.
yes, um, all tiny moments that we won't see, and then we find out that Alex Burgess is doing what perhaps the worst thing he could be doing at this time. He's sleeping,
It's having a nap.
having a nap.
And so in his dreams, we get my favorite. I mean, I think everybody's favorite sequence from the first issue. It's the best scene. In his dreams, he's walking down this hall. He sees a young version of himself in a mirror. He grabs a candle, finds a cat that slowly leads him up this flight of stairs and takes him to this room where the cat sits in a chair in this solitary stone room. Alex enters this room as the child that he was when he first met Dream with his father. The cat turns into Dream. Dream is a furry, I guess. And we get. It's so interesting. Because I think, does get conflicted seeing Alex's whole journey, I think, throughout the first issue here. And portraying him as a child in this scene, I think, is the most key aspect of almost garnering sympathy for the character, in that, like, yeah, Mason, you're right, like seeing him twist into his father isn't at all what his life was supposed to be, but because of his father's actions, and what his father did, trapping Dream and keeping him there, it sort of forced Alex to become his father over the years.
And like, I mean, with him being a kid, you can make the argument of like, because of what happened with Dream, he never grew up.
Yeah.
Like, he stayed who he was for years. He never changed.
Yep.
Which
So-
is our first inkling that a lot about one of the overarching themes of the Sandman is going to be change, because it's at this point where we need to establish who Dream actually is. We've spoken of him so far in the issue as an entity, unknowable, and we find out that he is vengeful. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't scream. But he says he's going to grant Alex a gift to reward you for your years of hospitality. I give you this eternal waking. And we then see Alex Burgess wake up. Speak to Paul, who asks, are you all right? I had a nightmare. It's like I had a dream that a prisoner had escaped in this tower. He said, he did. He's out, Alex. He checked out this morning.
As his face begins to melt in this
Oh man,
green and horrifying Sam Keethery, Alex wakes up again.
It's even more horrifying if you've had one of those nightmares where you think you wake up, but you're still in the nightmare. If you've ever had that experience, this makes this scene even worse.
Yeah. He wakes up again. He sees this nurse whose head pops off and melts on him and starts talking to him, and the implication is it's just going to keep happening again and again and again, and at least for now, Alex won't be dying or being put to rest anytime soon. My God, what the fuck?
He's just sleeping.
He's not dead. He's just sleeping.
Yeah, and the ending of the issue is on Paul McGuire's frantic cries, trying to tell his lover that it's all right and he just needs to just wake up. A horrific end to Sleep of the Just.
I gotta say, I like how this issue starts with someone going, "Wake up, sir," and that's also basically the last line of this issue. Please wake up.
Gaiman's so good. I mean, it's a really simple thing to do that, but just Gaiman's good. Like he understands what he's doing, and even like a 1980s Neil Gaiman, in probably his most unrefined Neil Gaimanness.
This is a Neil Gaiman who hasn't even written Good Omens yet.
Yeah, he hasn't done most of the most popular Neil Gaiman works yet. And here he is, just fucking crushing it right out the gate. So, moving to issue 2, Imperfect Hosts. We meet Cain and Abel, and Gaiman does his first bit of comedy in the Sandman right here. But it's very dark comedy. It's black humor, and I just oh god, I love it.
Well, it's also partially because
it's Cain and Abel.
It's Cain and Abel, who are also. This is where Neil Gaiman gets to start tributing one of his big inspirations, Mr. Jack Kirby, who initially created many of the characters of this issue and of the Dreaming. I think it is important to note that this is immediate post-crisis DC universe. So we will be seeing DC characters in their then current incarnations showing up. But it genuinely feels like Gaiman wanted to take some of these characters from way back as the 30s all the way through the 70s and keep them alive somehow, even when they don't fit into what was the current DC universe at the time.
Yeah, he does this great retooling of these old characters and makes them perfectly fit into the kind of world that he's setting up here, while still keeping just like their the essential charm of how they were created. So
there is also this utter tension throughout this second issue. We know reading this for the first time, I remember knowing that this is Cain and Abel. I'm like, okay, I know what happens. So when's it gonna happen? I understand the biblical illusion. When is Cain going to kill Abel? It
has happened multiple times, and it will keep happening many, many more times for many, many more years. I love that. It's just great. Really, really fun.
As the gargoyle Gregory brings Dream into his kingdom, which is a mess. And he collapses on their doorstep. And these are our imperfect hosts. Abel, is the one to try to nurse Dream back to health, while Kane is far more violent. We find out that Dream was far too weak to find himself. Kane offers him some food, describes himself as.
Which also, I just want to say, this is like immediately after the first issue. The implication is that whatever little strength Dream had, he used on exacting his vengeance on Alex Burgess, and
Yeah.
checked out.
But I love this descriptor of Kane here of purveyor of petty dreadful, shilling shockers, blood and thunders, and first-rate nightmares. Because Kane and Abel were one of many horror hosts I found out recently for DC horror comics of the 1950s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yep. And
Oh, that's cool.
oh, I have no idea what I was going to say because I was going to spoil further stuff down the line because there's at least two more in the Dreaming.
There are a lot of horror hosts, a lot of them created by Jack Kirby. It's just a great writer. And
See, and this is character development, dear listeners. Go back to the early episodes of this podcast, specifically the Death of Superman stuff. Jacob having no clue who Jack Kirby was, and now we're here.
I have a feeling we're going to be reading some stuff by Jack Kirby potentially in the nearest future.
We will see. We will see.
But, Dream actually requests Cain and Abel's letters of commission to regain just a small fraction of his power, just enough to survive and exist in his realm, finally asking, where have I been? And it turns out he's been imprisoned, and then we go to a sort of familiar sight if you've seen this podcast, the 1980s rendition of Arkham Asylum for the criminally insane.
Yes, love it. We start setting up things for what will be like the larger arc through the rest of this first volume, and I don't know. I love the way Gaiman does Arkham Asylum. The fact that Gaiman hasn't written more deranged Batman shit in general just kind of baffles me, because it's perfect here. I absolutely love it. We get a look at John Dee here, who we're going to see a lot more of in the coming issues. That's mostly what our purpose here is for the
Now, I'm curious for you two. Did you expect John Dee to look like this shriveled corpse of a man?
God, no.
Oh, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Because oh my god, yeah. Because Audible, you're obviously not seeing him, and he was charming David Thewlis in the Netflix series. Oh my god, I forgot that would be a surprise to you.
You
guys.
forget that John Dee is a monster.
I remember at some point because in the past we were talking about it, and one of you said that at some point he's much I think someone said in the show he's much more suave than he is in the actual comics. He looks a lot more like an actual person. And I was like, the hell does that mean? And I chose not to look it up until I read the comic.
I'm so happy.
So I turned the page and I was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
He's had the ring for 100 years or something, and he's just he's withering away. Holy shit.
Yeah. If the ring in this case is a magic stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A magic stone that powers people's dreams.
Yeah. Just I that experience has completely escaped me because this is how I've known John Dee for so long. And also as cartoony comic book villain who fights the Justice League regularly. But
yes, because he's Dr. Destiny.
Yeah, Dr.
Oh,
Destiny.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
I was about to make a comparison to the Justice League series, where Dr. Destiny is voiced by William Atherton.
It's true.
And has no dick.
Yep.
Oh wow, that's unfortunate.
Anyway, back to Cain and Abel. Who I don't know. I just love the way Gaiman writes their interactions in their own realm. As Dream is slowly recovering, and as he goes off to
find his castle.
Yes, he goes back to his kingdom, back to the gates. He opens them up and finds ruin. And I love this 2-page spread so much when we first see it. Just despite the fact that as readers we've never seen the castle or anything of his realm before this point, you still get the feeling, just by the way that Keith draws it, that it was once something great, and that this is not what it should be like. If furthered even more by the way that Keith draws Dream's face immediately afterwards, just the despair that he looks at this with, when he's met by Lucien, who makes his way into this comic. And is also very different, I suppose, from people that only know the Netflix series, as
But also very similar in a lot of ways, let's be honest.
yeah. Oh, it literally is just an appearance thing. Like it, personality wise. I mean, Lucien is Lucien, um, yeah. But yeah, I love Lucien, and I love how he's introduced here. You immediately get a feel for the relationship that Dream and Lucien have, and why Dream being imprisoned for so long was so devastating to this realm.
Yes. We find out from Lucian that there are several dreams and nightmares that are gone. The Raven Woman has decayed badly, who we'll meet next volume. Brute and Glob have vanished 20 years ago, so 40 years ago, putting that in the middle of the 1940s. The fashion thing has been many things, essentially as time goes on, and that Cain and Abel have always been weird, but the weirdness has been getting worse, and we find that Dream has given Cain and Abel an egg as a gift. The egg is a baby gargoyle that Abel wishes to call Irving. And Cain will have none of that.
Because gargoyles' names always begin with a G. And this is cause, of course, to kill his brother. And I love the final panel here of the baby gargoyle just looking on.
Where does this blood splatter?
It's so good. Oh, I love it. Then we get our actual first look at what Dream's castle looked like before everything kind of went to shit. I love the way Keith draws it. I could gush about Keith's art forever. But yeah, we know where Dream decides that he has to go out looking for the 3 items that were stolen from him when he was first in prison: his helm, the stone, and his pouch.
As well as consulting the 3-in-1, which is basically Gaiman's first harking back to just a story concept, the concept of the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And to summon them, he has to be sacrificing a lamb under a crescent moon with honey and snakes, at a gallows that are at a crossroads. And he finds all of these things in dreams at midnight. Again, our first allusion to sort of just the general nature of the stories as the Hecate are summoned and are a fascinating trinity of characters, because they're characters who will be important for the entire series. And they share dialogue. And they also shift position on the panel multiple times, depending on who's...
without any implied movement between the characters. They just kind of just naturally do that.
I was gonna say, like, I love this, like, one page of just like one of them picking up the demon, the other one eating it, and then the third one burping.
Yeah.
Oh, like, so all good. On that left side. It's really
they're
cool.
Just continuously swapping positions. It's so cool.
It's also implied that they are all of the Trinities. All of the 3, sort of the 3 female groups in all of history. Yeah. And they each allow Dream one question.
And this is where one of my favorite things about early Sandman, and what I kind of love about it being set in the larger DC universe, is one of the ideas in specifically where Gaiman imprisoned Dream timeline wise, is it was just before in real life American comic books and superheroes really took off. And so the idea is that Dream, when he comes back into this world, when he's freed, he has missed the entirety of superhero history. So he is unfamiliar with this world, and it's not just like a plot contrivance to be like, oh yeah, well he just doesn't know any of these people. Oh, what are you talking about? They've been around for literal decades. But here they are, both from a publishing standpoint and in world. Like Dream has no clue who these people are. He doesn't know who John Constantine is. We get a look at Green Lantern and Batman here. It's a really cool idea that is mostly only touched upon in the early days of Sandman, I think.
Yes. So we find out that the pouch of sand is in the hands of an Englishman, John Constantine. Um, the the helm was traded with a demon many years ago and is in hell. And that the gem passed from mother to son, who tapped its dream magics for his own ends. Ask the League of Justice about its present whereabouts. And to all of these three, Dream wants to ask more questions, but he cannot.
Yeah, it's very important here, establishing early on that even with all this dream and fantasy logic, there are certain rules that need to be adhered to because, well, spoilers, breaking those rules have consequences.
Indeed.
Yeah, and like I like how these rules are set up also for like Dream himself, because you have this like, I guess, worry of making him seem too much like a god. And I mean, he very much is a god in this world, but like he still has to abide by the rules of everyone. Like, and like everyone does, I would assume, like as time goes on.
Yes.
Just like the law of nature, I guess.
Yeah.
And
the Dream knows where he's going now. We see Abel crawl out of the ground and make his way back to his
to the House of Mystery. We also see as Dream decides where to go next. I just noticed this for the first time. There's a cameo from Guy Gardner and Ted Kort.
Indeed. Yep.
And I'm guessing Black Canary. I can't quite tell who the third person is.
Probably.
Yes.
Probably Black Canary. Yeah.
But yes. Anyway, Marcus had a thing to say.
Oh, no, I was going to comment on the same thing, now that we get this really nice little bit of art where the flames in his robe start taking shape. It's just really cool.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
I like the note that the issue ends on. First off, with this wonderful backdrop to these 6 panels of the blood coming from the top and dripping down to the bottom of the page, of Abel just sort of rationalizing his abuser to the newborn gargoyle. Just so beautifully fucked up. I love it.
He's going to call the gargoyle Goldie, but in his heart, he'll always think of him as Irving. Really.
Yeah. Going into issue 3, Dream a Little Dream of Me. It's my baby. It's my baby. He's here. I'm so happy. We had some little sort of John Constantine content on the podcast before, but this is the first actual like John Constantine story we've covered on the podcast.
Yes.
And I'm so happy. He's so fucking great. I really can't put it into words. I love him. Actually, I guess that brings my question to Mason and Marcus as we open up this issue. What was your history with Constantine as a character, other than the Joanna Constantine version in the Netflix series?
Because this is really, I'm only really now getting into comics, and this is really only my first real encounter with John Constantine. Because outside of that, it's just I know him more by reputation. The Keanu Reeves movie I'd heard of. I'd never seen. The series I'd heard of, but never seen. So, again, just I know him more by reputation than ever actually having experienced his stuff.
Yeah. You have also seen the Harley Quinn series. He's in that.
Yeah.
Briefly, but still great. Cool. And also, I would recommend to anyone, please watch the 2014 Constantine series. I know there's no chance of bringing it back, but in my mind there is. Mason, your history of John Constantine.
I mean, hey, the Keanu Reeves movie got a sequel.
Fuck that thing. Fuck that thing.
Yay!
Joey, I'm trying to give you hope. If the Keanu Reeves movie can get a sequel, then maybe.
I can dream. Ironically. Mason.
Yeah. So like I very similar to Marcus. I've heard of the movie, never seen it, heard of the show, never seen it. Very much by reputation. I do think I know one thing about the character. And doesn't he age along like in real time or something?
In the original 300 issue Hellblazer run, yeah, he aged in real time before he was brought over into more mainstream DC continuity with the New
Okay.
52. So yeah,
And also,
that's very good.
that he is, I think, canonically bisexual
Yes,
and
he
was
is.
brave enough to fuck a shark.
Yep, very much so.
Oh,
Yep,
wow.
yeah, he's great. Anyway, let's get going. Oh, I love it. Look at him. Look at this bastard waking up, cigarettes, fucking miserable looking room, just fucking dying. I don't know. It's great.
Oh my god, Joey.
Oh, I love him. He's so good.
Fucking dying
guess-
and shit. He's so cool.
I love
Um,
this conversation he has with himself. Hello, London. Hello, John Constantine. How are you then, London? All right. Full of people. Raining. You. Not bad. It's almost lunchtime, so I'm heading into town for breakfast. Good idea, John. Thank you, London.
Yeah, I love that.
Oh, it's so good. I also love the songs that play around John before Dream appears before him.
They are all related to dreams.
Yeah, it's
Somehow.
really fun. I also like to think one of them is Sweet Dreams, which I forget who originally sang Sweet Dreams, but I would like to think
Rhythmics?
Annie Lennox.
I would also like to think no, not that version of Sweet Dreams. Different, totally different song, Sweet Dreams. The one that's playing on the jukebox thing here in the diner. It's a different Sweet Dreams, and I can't forget who sings it originally, but there is an Elvis Costello cover of it, and I would like to think that because every British comic book writer references Elvis Costello, apparently, even Alan Moore, like I would like to think it's the Elvis Costello version playing here. So I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So he's going about his day. He sees he keeps hearing these songs. I forget the name of this old lady that comes up.
Mad Hetty. Mad Hetty.
Mad Hetty.
I love her.
Oh my god, I love this whole sequence. I love just the whole opening to this issue. It is so perfect, and just like I don't know. I know that it probably wasn't the intention to have it be like more like cross promotion, because like it was more Hellblazer promoting Sandman than it was Sandman promoting John Constantine as a character.
Because Hellblazer would have been running for about a year at this point.
Yeah, there's literally an issue around this time of Hellblazer where like you see the aftermath of this Sandman issue. Like Dream literally shows up for a page, and it's them like parting ways, and Constantine reflecting on it. So yeah, it's cool.
But we throughout all this, we have this character of Rachel, she is in the first page is dreaming, and at this point, a man is going to rob this home, and then finds himself in a dream where he can dream himself as absolutely anything. It's horrific, and this is where I'd like to bring up the fact that this is the first time Neil Gaiman is actually directly discussing the AIDS epidemic, and sort of how the AIDS epidemic needs to be treated above all else with kindness. You'll see it at the end of the issue, because Dream cannot save Rachel, but he can pull a kindness and allow her to have a peaceful sleep, which is very, very interesting because this is still 1988. Ronald Reagan is still the president of the United States. LGBT people are still dying of AIDS. We are. But Gaiman is going to go there and is essentially going to be writing this and the next two issues in particular to be almost his big reflection of the epidemic as an epidemic. And I think that is utterly fascinating.
Yeah.
But then we actually have John Constantine meet Dream for the first time.
And this is where we get the Eurythmics Sweet Dreams.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, he meets Dream, and in true John Constantine fashion, he completely disregards Dream at first. Constantine is well aware of the nature of the more supernatural elements of the world around him, but doesn't let that bother him. It's just he doesn't let that stop him from going about his day. I don't know. I love their immediate dynamic here. It's really cool. And Dream, of course, is very very business. He wants to know where the pouch got to, and again, I just love this scene. It's so cool.
It could be somewhere in Chaz's lockup.
We get a Chaz call out, my son Chaz.
And a Chaz appearance a little later. We also get a call out for Swamp Thing because Constantine is like, you can't. I hope you don't expect me to go on public transport with you dressed like that. Be dead embarrassing. Is this better? I haven't introduced you to the big green bloke. You'd like him. He hasn't got a sense of humor either.
Oh, it's so good. I love him.
And so we go to the lockup, and in the files, what's interesting is there are several large files. One on Brujeria, one on the plant elemental, which is Swamp Thing, one labeled Crisis, implying that John Constantine has studied what happened in Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yep.
Um,
American Gothic, Liverpool, and Tibet.
I imagine those are Constantine stories.
Liverpool, because he's John Constantine, probably. Can't imagine off the top of my head what the other two are. Oh, wait, no, Tibet. Wait, no, I know what Tibet is.
Okay, so they're definitely John Con. Maybe American Gothic is like his first appearances in Swamp Thing, or no,
maybe.
that wouldn't.
I don't know.
I'll just say, based on what Joey said last time we talked about it, Liverpool gets mentioned in the Netflix series.
No, you're thinking of Newcastle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Wow. Sorry.
No, you're good. Well, Newcastle does get brought up in this issue, though. Still,
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, he pulls up these files. Him and Chaz and Dream. I love the image of them all in the taxi together with Dream in the back.
Yeah.
Completely silhouetted like that. Just a really funny image. Once again, Gaiman and Keith just sort of laying into some comedic bits here, where in an otherwise very dark and serious story. Just really cool. So yeah, it takes us to this house where Dream and Constantine enter.
And where Rachel has the pouch,
Mhm.
and they find the body of the burglar who is being eaten by dreams, and Constantine wants to run away but can't. And they enter Rachel's room, and here's where we go full Sam Keith surrealism
Mhm.
with turning on a bloody light switch and falling through the clouds. Because this isn't only a dream.
Yeah.
And finding
Dream saving him, and I just love the way I love Constantine's face. This is really funny. Yeah, I don't know, I love it. They go into this other realm where all the walls seem to be made of like just this like waxy organ like material.
human
Oh,
flesh.
yeah. This
I
it
think
reminds
this
me
is
of Annihilation.
implied to be Rachel's father.
What was that?
I think this
Marcus?
is implied to be Rachel's father.
Did they say that? Oh yeah.
It's implied.
Yeah. Oh my god. They walk through this door. They keep walking down these horrible green halls with these like different souls, I'm assuming, just poking through. Oh, it's really fucked up. Trying to talk to Dream mostly. I love it. And then they make it through this last door here, and they come upon Rachel, who is sitting in this bed, naked, really
Gabbed.
yeah,
Really fucked up looking.
yeah, and Constantine is visibly spooked by this. We get the pouch, and
Dream is just going to leave her.
yeah, because he has what he wants, and Constantine demands that Dream, we can't leave her like this, and Dream says, okay, very well, we'll go outside then, and what Dream gives Rachel is just a pleasant dream before she dies properly. It's her and Constantine walking into the sunset, and then they leave. And before we end all this, Constantine asks Dream for one last favor. He says, ever since Newcastle, he's been having these horrible nightmares the last 10 years. Most nights he's like, wonder if you could just, it's implied he's asking just to like, help him out, just to maybe
Have a
take
good
those
night's
away.
sleep.
Yeah. And Dream, he says, I understand very well. And Constantine walks away singing Mr. Sandman. and that's that. I adore it. I adore it. Everyone read Hellblazer, absorb Constantine content in any way you can. It's so good. Anyway. We move into issue 4.
Which I want to say before we get into it properly, issue 4 here is tied with issue 6 for my favorite cover of this set.
Yes.
Oh, it's very
it's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Who would like to begin getting into this issue?
Well, I think Marcus should, because he loves Lucifer.
Yeah, too. And just like I will say too, like the more I read or experience this issue in any way, like the higher it climbs in my ranking. Like I'd say of the single issues, this is probably my second favorite now.
It's quality.
Yep. So we open in a void. Dream has recovered his bag of sand, so he's decided to make his next move to brave the hordes of hell in this really beautiful page where the void slowly forms a pier and we get this lovely title.
Mm-hmm.
And then he steps off said pier and falls through dimensions.
Yep.
Basically comparing his descent into hell to
Sorry, not hell. This is just Sam Keithland.
Basically, he's comparing his trip into hell to that of the Morning Star, who he saw fall.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And so he goes down into hell. He makes his way to the gates. He is begrudgingly welcomed in.
First by Squatterbloat.
I love the names of these guys.
Squatterbloat. And their designs, which are very, very... They're all so unique.
Yeah.
And then...
Etrigan.
Some more Jack Kirby bullshit.
More Jack Kirby bullshit. I love Etrigan. Oh my god. Another character that if you can in any way, just absorb more Etrigan content. Great. In fact...
Mason! Mason!
Yeah.
You wouldn't have known Etrigan. What did you think of Etrigan?
Etrigan. Etrigan's awesome. I like. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got. It's just very, very interestingly designed character, like adjacent to everything else, I think.
And you know what? I will say actually, if you're intrigued by any of these characters that get like small appearances here, like Etrigan, John Constantine, and hell, even John D. There's a great animated movie called Justice League Dark. I would highly recommend it. It's one of the best modern DC animated films. I love it. So anyway, yeah, love Etrigan though. He's just a rhyming poet demon. I love him. He's great.
He also has the form of a man at times.
Yeah. And so he guides Dream to where he wants to go. They pass by this one cell where a woman pleads to Dream. I always forget how to pronounce the name for Dream in her language. I forget. Haikul, that's it. Thank you. She begs to him to free her. And we see what she sees. We see how she sees Dream from like a different perspective, and he takes on pretty much a completely different form. This idea that different cultures and different belief systems see Dream and the endless in different ways. I love that idea. It's one that we're really going to play on in some later volumes. It's really, really cool. Dream leaves her. Her name is Nada, and we will find out.
Still loves her?
We will find out Nada on her right now. But we'll get to that.
What a funny joke
later. I will see myself out of this podcast.
I'm just looking at the next page now, and it's like I never noticed this before, but it looks like so much of the castle in hell looks so much like the castle in The Dreaming.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's very intentional. First off, because also they're both Sam Keith designed castles.
Yeah, it's the same architect.
Yeah, but also just it's. I'm sure it's very intentional that they look the same. And then we make our way to the Morning Star himself, Lucifer.
Enter David Bowie as Satan.
Yeah, in all his David Bowie glory. This is Lucifer, the Neo Gaiman take on Lucifer. It's perfect. I love it. I love portraying Lucifer as this just sort of blasé god. um, but there are very clear ways to get under his skin and to just to piss him off. I love it. So his immediate uh interaction with Dream is sort of teasing him. But they don't exactly go into like how well these two do each other before Dream was in prison, but I imagine fairly well. The Endless, I imagine, had a pretty open relationship with a lot of these godlike creatures.
It's heavily implied that Lucifer has offered an alliance with Dream before, and we figure we also the next demon we meet, Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, once again through Todd Klein's wonderful lettering, is revealed to be the demon with which Ruthven Sykes made a deal with.
Yes, I love that detail.
So good.
All done through the lettering. And we find out that Hell is a triumvirate between Lucifer, Beelzebub, and Azazel.
Which, once again, is a thing that was just part of larger Vertigo things at the time.
And I do kind of want to say, too, just a minor thing. I don't like this design of Azazel. I kind of like the redesign he has in Season of Mist so much more.
Yeah, I agree. I do prefer the Season of Mist one. But yeah, you mentioned the three sort of rulers of hell. Yeah, that was something that sort of like Hellblazer had really delved into before this. Actually, not terribly long before this. And they sort of like bounced off each other a lot in how they handled that sort of hierarchy. It was really interesting. But yeah, sorry, go on.
And Dream is basically asking, now, tell us, which demon has your helmet? And we see the forces of hell assembled in all of their glory. There are
you questioned all of there, but really you should have been questioning the word glory, Jake.
yes.
Just Sam Keith goes full Sam Keith, and it's the craziest fucking monsters that you can imagine put to page.
And it turns out the demon that has Dream's helm is Clorinzone, who is essentially an MC of a nightclub.
Yeah.
A Duke of Beelzebub.
You know what he reminded me of?
What?
The Mask.
You know,
Like
I didn't want to imagine Jim Carrey's voice for this, but now you're gonna force me to do that, aren't you?
So see, Jacob said that, and now do you know what I'm thinking? Which I don't think it works. I think it was probably a few years after this. Alan Cummings' take on the MC.
I mean, I think Cummings started playing the MC earlier than that film production, so it's very possible. But yes, so basically there's going to be a challenge through the laws of hell for Dream to reclaim his helm, and Corinzone asserts reality, and I adore the way the challenge is portrayed in a literal club, literal Hellfire Club.
The challenge is great, but I will say, because we've talked about adaptations a lot for this for this episode, and it's one of like the only scenes that I think an adaptation has done better than the comic, and pretty much every other version of the story. The Netflix version is so fucking perfect for the challenge.
Yeah, I love the Netflix version because and you can't really get this with like a book medium, but like just the pause between answers.
Yeah.
And just being in literal darkness and then just like the small like hope.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love that. And also I love the idea that
the way the game manifests itself in the Netflix series. I think it realizes it better than the comic kind of can.
Yeah. I do know why. I mean, logistically, yeah, it should be Corinzon that has the challenge, but I do like the idea that it's Lucifer and Dream instead in the Netflix series.
I get why they did it. Gwendolyn Christie is a big name, so they wanted her to do stuff, but also it's like, I feel like it kind of diminishes Lucifer as a threat since they already kind of lost in their first appearance.
Well, without really trying to spoil anything about later on, Lucifer isn't necessarily built up. I mean, Lucifer's built up as a threat, but never in the Sandman comes in direct conflict with Dream. So the fact that they made a point of that in the Netflix series is I think is pretty important. But that's beside the point. We're talking about the comic anyway. It's a challenge of words and physical manifestations of those words, and it's really really fun. It's a fun idea.
And it starts fairly small and then builds and builds to a universe spanning, eventually becomes anti-life, and then Dream wins through being abstract by,
It is the
saying,
concept of
I am
hope.
hope.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
Beautiful.
And of course, Lucifer can't take that. So when Morpheus tries to leave, honorable, you joke, surely. Look around you, Morpheus. The million lords of hell stand arrayed about you. Tell us, why should we let you leave? Helmet or no, you have no power here. What power have dreams in hell?
So good. And then of course I love
So good.
the Dream speech afterwards because it's one of my favorite Dream lines ever. You say I have no power, perhaps you speak truly, but you say that dreams have no power here. Tell me, Lucifer Morningstar, ask yourselves, all of you, what power would hell have if those here imprisoned were not able to dream of heaven? And it's just, it's so good, so good, fucking perfect line. God. And Marcus brought out the actor in me for a second. Fucker.
That is quite probably my favorite line in this entire 8-issue thing.
Yeah. Oh my god, it's so good. And Dream leaves, and
We have a small epilogue of the death of Ethel D, giving her dear son the amulet that she got from hell that will protect him in his quest, and that's our epilogue.
You know how fucking nuts Dave McKean is? Look at this next fucking cover, man. Just like the fucking chains and the locks. You know that's not a photograph. Dave McKean fucking did that. Like, that's fucking nuts. That's so fucking nuts. I can't get over that. Anyway, issue 5. What's it called?
Passengers.
Passengers, thank you.
Once again, describing several different passengers. Literal passengers, the silent passenger of AIDS, as well as just Dream as a passenger. And this is the first of 2 issues where I don't want to say Dream gets a backseat, but he kind of does.
Yeah. I mean, the next issue, he's totally gone from the story altogether.
Yes.
This one, he's at least still present for a fair bit of it.
Yeah, we open with Dr. John Dee's Dr. Destiny's escape from Arkham Asylum for the criminally insane. As
the small
guards...
Scarecrow, the Batman villain.
Yeah. So Jonathan Crane, who, if you listen to our Nightfall episodes, we found out that in the Dirk Maggs verse of DC comic adaptations, the Scarecrow has always been played by the same actor.
Yeah, both in the Nightfall audio drama that Dirk Maggs did and in the Sandman. So I just fucking weird. How about that?
And Jonathan Crane has this amazing idea of, you can leave, but you're going to come back. Also, there's a April Fool's surprise next door, and nothing has been the same without the Joker. Again, entrenching this issue very much into the DC universe of the time. Destiny sees next door. The April Fool is a guard hanged with a "kick me" sign, which allows Dr. Destiny to escape. And he gets a gun, and flags down a car, becomes an unwilling passenger to this woman with, "Hello, I'm going to find my mat, my ruby. You're going to drive me. I'll tell you where to stop. Trust me, I'm a doctor."
Comment is just throughout this issue, I love the lighting on John D. How, several times it just makes his face look like a skull.
Yeah,
which, if you've ever seen the original Dr. Destiny costume.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's pretty much just Skeletor.
And okay, now on this next sequence, I need to know what Mason made of it.
Yeah, so I imagined that it was like some sort of flashback for John Dee, or like some weird like physical manifestation of like emotions or something.
Okay.
And am I dead wrong or like?
Well, it is a flashback, not for John D.
Oh,
Joey, do you want to explain the Jack Kirby bullshit?
Jack Kirby bullshit is Jack Kirby bullshit. This is a wee place called Apocalypse. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all. This is Apocalypse. This is the home of the New Gods.
And Dark Side,
And Darkseid, and we see
Granny Goodness,
here.
not played by Ed Asner.
Nope. Yeah, that's all this is. It's really random. It really comes out of nowhere.
Well, it's a nightmare. It's the nightmare of one Scott Free.
Yeah, who's Mr. Miracle from the New Gods, and it's
And
like it's. I
this
get
is the one
why
like
it's here.
DC. This is like the one DC universe thing, right? And unless you are actively reading DC at the time, I don't think you're going to get this.
yeah,
Like,
because I had no idea what the hell was going on. I was like, what the fuck?
Most definitely, yeah. Most of the other DC Universe connections throughout these early issues, like the game does a pretty good job of like catching you up and like letting you know like who all these characters are, at least very briefly, and you know how to quickly get on board with who they are. But this is just I know it totally throws you for a loop, and if you don't know who these characters are, it's a complete mystery to you. But yeah, Scott wakes up with Dream at the foot of his bed. And we'll catch up on that in a bit as John D continues his journey with the very nice woman that he has hijacked.
This woman says that her husband's a mafia hitman. He'll kill you, so don't even think it. It's like, and you know, so D is not the actual passenger here. It turns out Rosemary, this woman, is a passenger, and you're on the edge. You're always on the back foot with this issue because D has this gun, and Rosemary's doing everything she can. Like, she offers D a coat to wear. This is also the first time we have inks from the late great Malcolm Jones III,
Such a good
who
inker.
will become the primary inker for a while after this issue. Immediately after this issue. That's what this first bit is. We then are cutting between the Justice League plot and D in the car. We find out that the Dreamstone was originally from Dr. Destiny, who made nightmares real. It was on the JLA satellite. It might have been moved to somewhere. Scott Free does not know, but
he knows who might, and he's gonna go wake that person up. We go back to John D and Rosemary here, getting some really just unsettling conversations between these two. I adore the tension building here. So
Rosemary offers D food and asks, you can look, John, I'm a nurse. You can tell me I won't freak. Is it the big A? The big A. AIDS. I was like, helpers? Hey, do you know the disease? Is that why you look like you do? Where have you been for the last 5 years? And of course, he's been locked in the madhouse. But once again, Gaiman is weaving AIDS as this constant background element of the story that I think very much is a point, especially of early Sandman, and sort of the mishandling of it and how terrible that actually is, all through little scenes like this, very subtly.
I really like that with this comic, and again, I haven't read a lot of comics, so I don't know how much they do or don't do this, but like, I really like how aggressively like set in 1988 this comic is. Like, I don't know how else to describe it, but like, it is set in the very, very real world of 1988, which I feel like, for me at least, it adds more of a grounded note to it. Because, like, I mean, a lot of the comics I've read, they felt very timeless. I think in like when they're set.
Yeah.
But like this one, it feels very much like, it's set in like the real year of 1988. Like that, like our world, like this world in this comic would not exist if it wasn't for the real world that we lived in at the time. And I really like it when stories do that. I know a lot of people try to make their own stories timeless, especially if like you're wanting your story to be set in or like read like years and years after. But just setting it in what at the time was just the very real present world just makes it feel more real and like grounded with these big concepts of like Dr. Destiny and the dream of the endless. Like it just makes it feel more like powerful and like it makes things feel like they have more consequences, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I know what you mean. We go back to our Justice League plot then. Love the JLI robes. Just the things
Yes.
with a little JLI on it. But also Martian Manhunter. I know, Marcus, you're probably a little more familiar with the character, so I guess I'm just more curious. I mean, I'm assuming you are, Marcus, right? You're a little bit more
Yeah,
about
no,
Martian Manhunter. Okay. Mason.
Oh yeah, nothing. This was the first time. I guess technically the Audible was the first time I'd ever like actively experienced Martian Manhunter. I know he's in one of the Zack Snyder movies, I think.
Yeah, in Zack Snyder's Justice League, very briefly.
Yeah,
Well,
and
I
like,
guess technically, he's in all three.
But
oh, is
but-
he?
really,
Have you seen all of them, Mason?
I've seen Man of Steel and I've seen Batman v Superman. I've not seen either version of the Justice League yet.
Okay, all right. I won't say anything more then.
Okay.
But yeah, so Sean Jones, the Martian Manhunter, is having a nightmare here about Lord Lazoril, who's a fire demon thing. And Martian Manhunter is
Lazoral is how he sees Dream.
Oh, that's right. That is correct. But yeah, so yeah, he sees him as a fire demon thing because Martians are weak to fire. It's one of their weaknesses. It's the whole thing. Anyway, but yeah, he talks to Dream here, who it's not implied that he ever sees Dream normally at all, right? Because there's this one
Right.
point where we see
I think
Dream
so, yeah.
normally, but that's
yeah, but
about
that's
it.
because we're in the perspective of Mr. Miracle, who sees Dream as Dream.
Yeah. But Martian Manhunter tells Dream where he believes the Dreamstone was last held, which is a warehouse in upstate Gotham. Dream goes out to look for it, and we go back to.
And Martian Manhunter offers Scott-Free a secret stash of Oreos, which he is welcome to partake.
Yes. Another thing about Martian Manhunter is his love of Oreos. It's a whole thing. Anyway,
I love it. He's so cool. I like him. Like
He's great.
from these like 2 pages, I like Martian Manhunter.
He's pretty great. I would recommend watching the Justice League cartoon that Jacob is currently going through. It's got some really great Martian Manhunter content in it. So yeah. Anyway, back to the car ride of death. John D is still traveling with his companion Rosemary,
And a lot of this is trying to build up who John D actually is as we head towards Mayhew. And just the madness of this man trying to find his ruby. Like Rosemary in these 2 pages has 2 lines of dialogue about her children. And about dreams, but it's all a John D monologue.
Yeah.
And also, as D keeps going on, you kind of see what's a good word for it? You kind of see Todd Klein's letters degrade as he keeps speaking.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
And like just like a small little thing, I like the way that the artist did the headlights reflecting on the street, like in these last few panels.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why that it really stuck with me.
Yeah, it's pretty great. Dream is then on his way to go find the Dream Stone in this warehouse in upstate Gotham.
Going through several dreams.
Character.
Yeah. We have the first appearance of Merv Pumpkinhead.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I didn't notice that last time.
Yeah. But And Dream gets to the warehouse first, and in the warehouse you see a bunch of things that are references to Justice League stories.
I was gonna ask.
I'd assume, I don't know many of them. I recognize at least one reference to the Joker, but there aren't many.
Yeah, no, it's just a fun little Easter egg page.
But he
Drew makes his way.
finds
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Ruby, and it's corrupted. It rebounds its energy back at him, finding him to collapse. Dee arrives with Rosemary, and you ask Rosemary, your husband Harry, is he really a mafia hitman? Harry, God, no. That was just something I said when I was scared you were dangerous, crazy, or something. Harry's a high school teacher. Oh, well, I don't suppose it would have made any difference either way. And he just shoots her.
That's like, that is like really, like, I love the way that the story just corrupts people like over the course of the issues. Like, and actually, I don't know if corrupt is the right word, but I just love the evolution of just this woman driving Dee and being like, because like at the start, like he's pointing a gun at her, and then by the end he's like, oh no, dude, I was just lying because like I didn't know the real you back.
Yeah.
He's a teacher. Like, it's really creepy.
Yeah. But yeah, Dee makes his way into the warehouse. He gets the Dreamstone from Dream. He leaves. He makes his way to a diner, an all-night 24-hour diner. And that
As he's going to be
brings us
waiting
in.
for the end of the world.
That brings us into issue 6, 24 hours.
So this is the big famous issue of the Sandman.
Yes.
And the Sandman doesn't even show up in it.
Until the very end.
Yeah. I love it.
I do want to say that for me personally, who is kind of a wimp when it comes to horror, I actually think reading the comic is the most palatable way to take it in. Like, I've said in the past how the Audible version has kind of traumatized me, but it's like something about just reading it, not witnessing it being performed, just makes it a little easier to take in for me.
See, I think it depends on like what you're more susceptible to, what makes you squeamish, what really gets under your skin, whether it be some of the more grotesque moments of the Netflix version, the descriptions in the Audible version, or just seeing it drawn on a page like in the comic here. It really depends on like person to person. I'd say personally for me the most brutal one is probably the Netflix version, just because it's live action, it's very visceral for me.
For me, it's like
personally.
Yeah, and like for me, it's definitely the Audible version because I've always been scared of like things that, like if like I've always been scared of like the things that I can come up with about a situation rather than like the situation itself. Because like if I'm watching here, I'll give a quick example. Like whenever, like I guess small spoilers for the movie Under the Skin. But there's a scene in there which shows this woman kill these like two people, and it's revealed later on that those two people had a kid, and like he goes the woman goes later on to like collect their bodies or whatever, and like this kid who's like 5 months old maybe is just still sitting there.
Oh, geez.
And it's like it's fucking horrible, and just like the way that
Wait, is that the one? Am I thinking of the right movie? Who's in that?
It's with Scarlett Johansson.
Okay, I'm thinking of the right one. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like
I think I watched it like when it first came out. I don't remember much about it.
But yeah, just like the image of the kid, that didn't really fuck with me, but just the image of my head of like what happens after always stuck with me more than anything.
I gotcha.
And so just like hearing the noises and like the voices and just everything that's happening and forcing my brain to come up with what it looks like. For me, that's the scariest version of the story.
Totally understandable.
Yes.
All right, let's get into this.
So also, one before we really get into this, quick content warning.
We will do anything to avoid talking about the issue.
Quick content warning. This gets really dark, but also this is the first time that Mike Dringenberg, who inked the first 4 issues, is promoted to penciler.
Yeah. That said, I do want to live in the timeline where Sam Keith stayed on for one more issue.
I
just
see. Part of me is deadly curious, but also part of me is like, I feel like that timeline might be too much. Like,
that's what got the Sandman canceled in '88.
Yeah. but yeah, this is just 24 hours in an all-night diner. From different perspectives. Our first perspective is waitress Betty Monroe, who thinks she's a right. Betty Monroe writes stories. She writes them in longhand on yellow legal pad, and she writes about all the people in her life, the diner, and she is a normal woman. And a lot of these people are essentially normal people, but each of them have some dark secret inside of them. Betty
Real quick,
is
real quick. I
yes.
just want to say I like the line. She makes these stories end happily because it's like she's forcing them to do so rather than just them having happy endings.
Yeah.
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 Like Betty is the first person we learn what her dark secret is.
I mean, it's a whole issue. I mean, we get into the heads of a lot of these people in this diner, but what Gaiman does, I think, is just this brilliant job of finding ways, at least in an inner monologue sort of way, to rationalize horrible behavior.
Yes.
Um,
We start with what at the time would be considered normal horrible behavior. Betty Monroe's a homophobe in her stories. There's, young,
what's her name? Judy.
young Judy, who is a lesbian,
Mhm.
and in
so
all
in
of her,
in Betty's stories about Judy, like she's straight. She's she just totally erased that part of her life. I love it. Just little things like that. Just like you just the way gaming gets into their heads. I adore it. Really well done.
there's a young man waiting for a job interview at a big chemical plant. Maybe Betty will write a story about him. There's a lovely married couple who are, lovebirds. Take one away, the other will die. And there is, poor Marsh who lost Marcia. And there's the newcomer who has been there in a world of his own, nursing his own coffee, dreamstone and amulet in hand. And by this point, this leads us into hour 2, where Dee begins to exert his influence by stopping the young man who has a job interview from leaving and just sits down to get some more coffee. Hour 3, John Dee watches a soap opera while Judy makes a phone call to one Rose. We will learn who Rose is next time we cover the Sandman. And we'll learn who Donna is a couple times after that. Because this is surprisingly, this is also an issue that seeds a lot of the seeds for where the series is going. And this is sort of where we hint at what at what Judy's deep dark secret is, and is that she hit her girlfriend.
Mhm.
And then we go to hour 4 where we start to get the dark stuff.
Yeah.
It's a fun little kid show.
It's Dino's Kid Vid Playhouse that John Dee is watching and laughing at, and he makes the presenter slash his wrists up and down, not
Oh my
across the
god,
wrist.
it's so fucked up. I love it.
So fucking dark. And it's just him laughing in the last
just
corner
fucking
of that
cackling
page.
in the corner. Oh my god.
And the only reason he does it is because he wants to see how far he can reach out with his powers.
Yeah.
And time starts to tick. Hour 6. The flies get restless.
The little subtitles the hours have. I love it.
Yeah. Our married couple want to leave. They've been here for hours, but they then love this place. Judy's writing a letter to Donna. Can't really find the words, and they all dream into hour 7, making them feel good. Where we have, Gary showing how much of a greedy, lecherous bastard he is. Kate wanting to keep him by having his head on a silver platter. Dee then comforts them in hour 8, makes them feel good. And we get our first flash that the rest of the world is also going crazy through all of this. We never see it go crazy.
You hear like descriptions
I
of it
love
on
it.
the news, and that's about it.
But then hour 9 is where things then really start to turn. We start conflict. Marsh tries to attack Judy with a knife.
Mhm.
I was just
Hour
gonna say
10
sorry, just real quick. It's so like powerful to me that Hour 9 is just one image, and it tells you everything you need to know about what happens with this
well,
one.
no, it's 3 panels, isn't it?
Oh, is
Yeah,
it?
it's three. It's
Yeah,
three panels.
because it's a 2-pager.
Oh, Hour 9. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
Yeah.
then,
Again,
but hour 10 is
I read it in the wrong order.
hour 10 is visually my favorite. They love
Wait.
him. It says. I just. Oh my god. It's
The
the most fucked up
mutilation
one.
starts.
Yeah. John Dee is being held up by these people. They have God written in blood on his chest. Like it's just. Oh, it's so grim. I love it. Oh my god.
And then hour 11 is they catch up on the news, and we question what's actually been happening.
Mhm.
And then hour 12, it is time for them to get to know each other better.
And this was always the most disturbing part for me because we learned that Kate is a necrophiliac.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then hour 13, they get to know
you know
each
that
other.
you know that thing where you don't realize how fucked up something you like is until you say it out loud.
Yeah,
I never described 24 hours out loud.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's
this is
what
weird.
that's what 24 hours is. Hour 13, they get to know each other intimately. They are basically, it's the orgy set to the theme song for the Addams Family,
Yep.
ending on a joke of the climax, leaving Dr. D just to say, "Neat."
Neat.
What's the what's the writing in the background there? You see that? Like between the image,
Oh,
like
jeez,
between the
what is
panels?
that? I don't even know.
No.
Well, I wonder if it's one of Betty's
This
stories.
it's one of Betty's stories. You see a lot of these background things that I think so. I believe these background things aren't actually Mike Dringenberg. There is a special thanks at the top of the issue to one Dom Corolla, who I believe did the special backgrounds behind the panels for this. This moves to hour 14, where Dee makes our 3 female characters tell him his future.
Like
you know,
the
Hecate.
yeah, yep. So
And it's a false future.
yep.
Hour 15 gives them back their minds.
For a
And
while.
we kind of get, again, one of the most disturbing sequences in this comic. Just, there's no philosophy. There's no reason to this. Dee's just doing this because he can.
And then hour 16 is Party Games, which is just 4 completely black panels that say Murder in the Dark, ah, and he.
It's man, like
Hour
Hour
17, Confession and Penance. This is the nail scene. It's oh my god.
man, this whole issue really is just I have no mouth and I must scream, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hour 18, he brings out the beast in them. He
They
makes them fight amongst themselves.
fight like animals.
Um,
They're all animalistic. Hour 19, he lies to them, promising, telling them the story of Snow White. Hour 20, it was time for entertainment. Where
what are they? Let's see. What are they singing here? Do we know?
I don't.
You must
I
be
kind of want to find out after this. Anyway,
Hour 21, he shows them the delights of belief, where Judy takes
gouges
some
out her eyes.
skewers. Hour 22, where they are just
They're all dead.
all dead.
He
I,
held
li- I like the very small little sticker of "Please and thank you" are magic words.
as he stands there just in his trench coat, like, oh my god.
And we
Um,
stay for hour 23
which
of
has no subtitle.
it just has
He eats a
John
fly.
Dee eating a fly. And
Um,
hour 24 of Dream's arrival. And oh boy.
it brings us to issue 7. Sound and Fury? Yeah, Sound and Fury.
Sound and Fury.
Yes.
So
Oh man, we could just end right there, right? We're done. I think I'm kind of drained.
well, we have 2 more issues
Don't
to
worry.
go.
Don't worry, the serotonin is coming.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I was going to ask because Marcus, before you said this was the issue you had your nitpick with, right?
Oh yeah, Sound and Fury. It's basically, after Passengers and 24 Hours, where we get all this sort of interesting stuff with John Dee, like his beliefs and philosophies and his actions. This is just him screaming.
I mean,
It's
sort
just-
of, but only because he's faced with a dream. I think it's
So this
Go
is the
ahead.
issue where we see the outside world in these first 2 pages of the madness. All done with only pops of color. It's kind of implied that Dream has been watching the madness and realizes he must interfere. I love the title page of just this one small panel. It feels very much like almost a book cover.
yeah.
Yeah. Or like a movie poster.
Yeah. And we essentially start to go through what's going to be this battle of Dream essentially saying, "No, you can't do this, Dr. D, because it's not meant for the power isn't meant for you. You're corrupting it and it is killing you." And D is visibly deteriorating. At this point, Mike Dringenberg is slowly drawing D with less detail throughout. And because D is angry, Dream convinces him to face him in the dreaming, which D is convinced makes him a coward. And we intersperse this with quite a lot of the madness. We have again content warnings for some very dark imagery.
Yeah.
Just listen, you can hear it.
Uh,
No.
Oh my god.
and the dream is John Dee's dream is a dream of a man as Caesar, as a Madden Julius Caesar, with all of the complexes that John Dee has had. Initially seeing these 3 female oracles who turned then into 3 Helm dreams, and then the 3 brides of Frankenstein. All about of John thinking, he can actually have power in this realm. The layouts of this issue go insane. It builds. There are several small references to different stories. There's a reference to Annie at one point, and we find out that the world is asleep, and the fate of the world rests on this dream. There's this point where the dreamstone looks like an apple, and the dreaming itself is shaken to its core. Eve is taken out of her cave with her raven cawing at the havoc. We see Goldie, Kane, Abel, and Gregory under the bed as monsters hiding, and we get our first look at another one of the Endless for one very brief moment of in the Garden of Forking Ways. Destiny finds himself for the perhaps for the first time, hesitant to turn to the next page in his book. And D is doing this, and Dream isn't really responding until the moment that D lets out his last lash he takes on this skull for a head, and he finds himself in a white void.
which is the most striking single page in this entire issue.
Oh yeah.
Just the completely white background with just the image of D there. Um, so good. And D is like happy that he believes he has obliterated everything, that he is the
He
king
has
of
won.
dreams.
He won.
He dances around in this white void until he realizes that the white void he is standing in is Dream's white hand, and Dream is just massive, and it's just, oh, it's fucking beautiful. I love it.
And this
Okay.
is the first time Dream actually realizes he has changed.
hmm Instead of exacting the same sort of vengeance he did on Alex Burgess, he thanks John. He says it has been a long time. I'd forgotten how much of my power I had placed in that jewel. How much of it was denied to me. Because at this point, D has destroyed the ruby, and Dream sort of realizes in this moment that he doesn't need it. And it's this eye opening moment for him. And Dringenberg purposefully draws Dream as very content here. You know, even just the way he draws Dream's body language when he's massive here, and he like leans over and he slumps and holds his knees. You know, just really really cool stuff that I think just perfectly gives across the whole vibe of this scene. As Dream just sort of lets John go, and he returns John D to Arkham Asylum. We get another look at Scarecrow here because of course we do, and that's pretty much that.
Yeah, we end with Dream giving the entire world one night of nice sleep. We end on this nice narration of the only noise is the gentle, even cadence of people asleep, in, out, in, out. Listen, you can hear it. And I love the way it ends. For the original printing, this was actually where the first volume ended, because when they initially printed the Sandman in trade format, they started with the second arc before going back to do Preludes and Nocturnes, which is fascinating.
Yeah,
fascinating choice.
but also the final tagline of it is "Next, a death in the family," which is so perfect.
And this
Oh,
is
no.
89, so I'm genuinely curious.
It was definitely a play on the Batman story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get the best cover as we go into our last issue of this collection.
Oh yes, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is
yeah.
The Sound
This
of
is
Her
the big
Wings.
one.
Boy, this is familiar. Watchers of Blood Donut Studios. It is the second most popular video on the channel at the time of recording this, but we did a scene of this. We performed this first scene here from this issue. Me and my friend Taya, me as Dream, her as Death, and it was a good time. You should check it out. So
And we had Brian play a child.
Brian plays a child as he always does. But yeah, this is The Sound of Her Wings, and goddamn, it's so good. Dream
So
is sitting in a park feeding pigeons.
feeding the pigeons.
A soccer ball, I guess a football, is kicked his way. He grabs it and gives it back to the kid. He's approached by a woman dressed in all black.
I'm curious how people at the time would have taken this character, because there's no indication that this is one of the Endless.
Yeah,
Right?
true. But there is
and it-
also there's no real dialogue to really say like what her role in the universe is. We know that she's Dream's sister. We learn that pretty quickly. And then it's only throughout the rest of the issue that we find out who and what she is.
And
We also
I
get
love
the beautiful
coding
Mary
of Mary
Poppins dialogue.
Poppins.
The Mary Poppins
Yeah.
dialogue.
Because again, Dream 1 would not be the kind of person that goes see if Mary Poppins, but 2, he's been gone for like 80 years.
Yeah.
He
Well,
literally
again,
popped
those
up
things.
in America.
Once again, those things that like pop culture references that most people would make, just Dream just wouldn't get, and I think that's a very deliberate choice on Gaiman's end for how long he had Dream missing from the world.
It reminds me of just like the Winter Soldier, just like I'll put it on the list to like.
Yeah.
Just catching up.
Except Dream will not experience any of this realistically.
Oh no. He'll live forever and he'll still never find time to watch it.
Also, Death has got to be the most busy Endless, right? Like,
Right,
how
right.
has she seen Mary Poppins?
Well, death is everywhere, so
True. She's probably put it together from. I wonder how many people have died watching Mary Poppins. I'm sure there's a fair few.
well, she also takes a day every 100 years to become mortal. So she may have just.
What?
Oh yeah, that's a thing. It takes a day every year to become mortal.
Oh, wow. Cool. Man, I gotta read more of this. It sounds great.
That's also not
I
in
wish
the
I read.
Sandman itself. That can be seen in the Death miniseries. The
Damn,
high
I wish I
cost
read
of
more.
living.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so Death is here mostly to give Dream a talking to because he went on this giant revenge quest. He feels unfulfilled by it, and he never even called her. And that's all she wants. She's like Heath Ledger's Joker. All she wants is a phone call. And,
Also, just the sibling energy. Like,
it's
Oh, yeah.
beautiful. I love it.
Death is the big sister that everybody wants to have because she lets Dream go on this rant, and she's listening laid out on a bed of roses, and then gets her turn to call him, utterly the stupidest, most self-centered, appallingest excuse for an anthropomorphic personification on this or any other planet.
And if you want to hear that said properly out loud, go watch the video.
And
which,
she
which,
bips.
which Taya fucking nailed.
Wasn't this a line that was like quoted verbatim in the show?
I think so. They,
Oh,
they,
yeah, it
they,
is.
they did a lot of quotes verbatim in the show.
Okay.
Look,
Okay,
look.
fair.
The one thing they didn't do properly was the bip. There wasn't a bip. I demand
True.
the bip.
True. There is also they also cut most of the whole Mary Poppins conversation.
Yeah, that might be Wright's things because
Probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Anyway, so another football is kicked our way. Death catches it, just like Dream, hands it back to the kid. His name is Franklin. He says, "Hey, cool." He wants to buy her a soda. He calls her a fox. It's the late 1980s. And he's like, "Hey, can I see you again?" And she's like, "Sure, Franklin. You'll see me again soon." He's like, "Okay." Hey, how'd you know my name's Franklin? And they've disappeared. And
Also, like, we've never actually said that this is Death.
yeah. We're about to find out, though.
And we get our first glimpse of it with some casual 80s racism.
I'm not sure it.
Yeah, I mean it is, but also I wonder if Gaiman was intending just if he was drawing on things that did kind of happen. Like,
Yeah. And
this
there's
is a
also just like we're talking about the use of the word, right? Like that's all we're referring to here. Like
people also say because he was pretending to be a Jew pretending to be a Romani. People will take issue with that.
I mean, it's just that's sort of the whole point of the issue, though, is that we're just coming in on people's lives, no matter like who they are, what they did.
And the idea being
the
that
idea being, and that's the point of this issue is Death as a character is fair. She's everyone gets the same thing, and she's a
and the idea that everyone faces themselves at the end.
Yeah.
And it is honestly, it's a sequence of very sweet scenes that also go to some really dark places because there's also some general questions asked of why people fear death when being lost in dreams is perhaps more powerful. Death is just there at the end to offer you the end of your life. Like the second person they visit is a comedian who
has a horrible accent. My God, it's a loose live wire as she's performing on stage, and she touches it, and she gets electrocuted and fucking dies, and she's taken away, and it's again just the same thing that this character offers everyone.
And in between all this, we hear, of course, the sound of her wings.
Yeah, which is story gets its name, and it's fucking beautiful, and it's just
we have then perhaps the harshest.
This is the one.
Oh man.
Okay, yeah. I mean, massive content warning. Baby death. Um,
Now, Mason, I know this was in particular difficult for you to go
Yeah.
through. Was it
Yeah.
worse now that Gaiman gave the baby dialogue and you see the
I
mother?
yeah. 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 It made it worse.
yeah,
The
Actually,
the
I think one thing I'll give the Netflix series over this is I think the baby talking is a little silly.
well, yeah, and again, it's another one of those things that only really works in the fact that it's a comic. You know, you can't really necessarily adapt that to a TV show because it'll just look fucking ridiculous, and it's a really harsh scene, and you don't want to take away from the reality of that moment.
Yeah. Because we then have, a montage of different deaths.
Yeah,
Um,
someone overdosing, someone drown, someone in a hospital bed, somebody
Someone
just
shot.
yeah.
Uh,
It's rough. It's really really rough.
but it's also kind of comforting in a way. Like, just in the way that death is portrayed, just as just a thing that happened.
Mhm.
Especially in the US, I've said it before, we have a very weak relationship with death. It's sort of one of those taboo topics that we do not discuss, and perhaps life would be better if we actually sat down and had to face it in our modern society. Like, actually face it and not just turn away in fear.
Which
Uh,
is quite the topic to be having on the Silly Comic Book Podcast.
yeah, well, this is Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is at this point I have to reveal that a couple of my friends at work found out that I do a podcast and they wanted to listen to some of the episodes I was on. So if you guys are listening to this one, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
it's not
not.
it's not typically like this.
Yeah, usually it's like us making fun of like weird like art for the women and like an 80s Superman comic or something. I don't know. Like
yeah, it's not usually like this. But when it is, I think it makes it all the more special that a comic like this is such an outlier. And
I also
Neil
may or may
Gaiman
not
is
have
such
written. I may have written an academic paper in college about the Sandman, talking about death. Um, did I quote this issue directly? Yes. Did I also quote other
I'm
future issues directly?
curious
Yes.
what line you quoted from this issue.
I quoted this, and I quoted I quoted. Uh, I believe I quoted the line about fear of Death's Land over Dream's Land, and then I quoted quite a bit of Men of Good Fortune.
Mm. What I always forget what issue it's in. I know a lot of people mistake it for being in this one.
It's the one. It's in Brief Lives.
Yeah, you get what everyone else gets, a
And
lifetime.
yes, I did quote that. I did
Yeah,
quote that.
which is just oh my god. Anyway, let's finish out the issue. We catch back up with Franklin, who dies. The end.
He runs into the
It's
street and is run over by a car. And we're ending this issue on such a which should be such a harsh note, but
but Death walks off with Franklin almost like a friend, and Dream walks away from that situation with renewed hope. It seems.
it's the first time in the Sandman that we ever see Dream of the Endless smiling.
Yeah, the last
Yeah.
line here that we close out on Dream's inner monologue is there's much to do in my kingdom, much to restore, much to create, but that can wait. I have found the solace I sought, though not in the way I imagined. From dreams I conjure a handful of yellow grain. I throw the grain into the air and I hear it. The sound of
And her
wings.
wings.
And
That's it.
That's
and that's
Sound
where
of
we
Her
end
Wings.
today, I
That's
think.
that's Preludes and Nocturnes. I just look it. Normally on a podcast episode with only 8 issues, I would try to have a decently paced conversation. But first off, we have 2 guests, and also this is the Sandman, and I had to give it the time it deserved. This is already I think nearing 2.5 hours. I don't have an exact time what I'm looking at, but it's it deserves it. It's truly one of the greatest comics of all time.
Yes, it is. It's one of my
Neil
favorite
Gaiman
stories.
is a master at his craft, and the fact that this story came so early in his career is a real testament to that, and what
Yeah.
he was truly capable of in his work. The Sound of Her Wings is one of the most beautiful single issues of a comic I've ever read. 24 Hours is one of the most brutal issues of a comic I've ever read, and they happen. There's a single issue that happens between them, and it's the ability to balance such tones and themes and such a complex story while still keeping it in such a core base emotional level
And
is what makes the Sandman so special, I believe.
and there are things that Gaiman would change. There are things in the Sandman that do age poorly. Go check Twitter while I'm talking real quick. Um, uh,
Oh no!
yeah,
We got another. He's back! My son! He made it!
What?
He's here.
What?
Oh, okay. It's just a comment. Good. Okay. At Joey can read this. Rules Panda says, "Hooray! I agree. Thank
he
you."
also says, "I have no questions. I'm just really excited."
Okay, this is my favorite Twitter user of all time. I love you so much.
Um, yes. So yeah, Preludes and Nocturnes is all that. It is the prelude. Um, the next volume of the Sandman, you get to see. Actually, I find it weird that Sean Franco said there isn't a narrative thrust because in the immediate next volume there is a narrative thrust.
Mhm.
Where there is a narrative thrust,
the next volume is the story that introduces where the Sandman will end.
yeah.
Like,
And then there's a breather for 4 issues, but even then, none of those issues are unimportant.
yeah, yeah,
I'd argue none of the 75 issues are unimportant.
yeah.
Uh,
Everything is, I mean, in true Sandman fashion and dealing with high concepts of gods and the endless and all that shit, nothing is unimportant in the grand scheme of things.
as well as life, humanity, and telling stories, why we tell stories. Uh, and I love it. I really hope our two guests loved it as well.
Any closing comments from our two guests?
You go first.
I don't have anything until we, get to the closing and the plugs and stuff.
All right, fair enough. Mason?
All right. And yeah, I guess the Sandman was an interesting story to experience, like over time, because the first thing I ever saw of it was the Netflix adaptation, which was very and like when I watched the Netflix adaptation, if you've like listened to that previous episode of the podcast, I knew literally nothing about the story. Like I didn't know what the characters were going to be. I didn't know what the story was going to be. For the first 30 minutes, I thought it was going to be a period piece. And I was like, oh, cool. And then it just, it like kept going. And I was like, oh, I see. And, just, and like experiencing it as like an audio drama and experiencing it as a comic, it's like, it's so cool to see a story that can be told in so many different ways. And like to have it come from like, just like a DC comic, and like I don't say that to bash DC Comics at all, because DC Comics have some of the most creative stories that I've ever heard about. I haven't read a lot of them, but they're genuinely like amazing to hear about. It's just like to have a story that is so universal among any format you tell it. It's really special, and the fact that again, like you said previously, like the fact that Neil Gaiman thought of it so early in his career is really impressive. Like it it changes anyone who experiences it. I feel like because I've not met a lot of people who have read the Sandman, but like the people who I've met who have read the Sandman, like they don't take it lightly. I guess like
Yeah.
everyone's read it and it stays with them. And I think it's so cool that the story has done it for so many people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well put, Mason. And before we start to close things out, Mason and Marcus, I just want to thank you guys so much for continuing this Sandman journey with us, though technically it is the start of it. Normally, I guess this is sort of the point in the podcast where we talk about adaptive material, but there is literally an entire episode of the podcast where the four of us have already talked about adaptive material for the Sandman. So, let alone mentioning it multiple times throughout this episode. Yeah. Experience the Sandman somehow. We'll definitely be doing more of it someday, but obviously it's not as big a priority considering Jacob has read all of it.
I've read it all
And the
more
goal of
than
the
once.
The goal of the podcast is to have Jacob read new things, but once again, we're starting a Vertigo block. Jacob's familiar with it. We have people that we could bring on it. It was a great way to spend time with people that I love talking about stories like this with, and it gets us in the right frame of mind for where we're going next time on the podcast.
Yes,
Jacob and Marcus and Mason. What do we think is coming up next on the podcast?
I'm gonna go last. You two go first.
All right, whichever of you would like to take a stab in the dark.
Okay. Vertigo. I only know a handful of Vertigo titles, some of which I own. I don't think it's Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, for reasons. I know it's not Lucifer, because I know neither of you have read Lucifer yet, so I am going to guess Hellblazer.
Okay. Mason?
So, I know nothing about anything, and I hear that there are reasons, but I'm going to ignore those reasons, whatever they may be, and say that you're covering Swamp Thing.
Okay. And
so
Jacob?
here's the thing. Okay, so I know it's a Vertigo block, and I know at least 2 Vertigo books that you adore, right? One of them has already been guessed.
I adore a lot of Vertigo books, my friend. You have a very narrow mind of what I love in DC Vertigo.
Well, there are 2 that come to mind that I know that you adore. So I have actually 3 guesses. 2 of them have actually already been mentioned by our guests. I believe it is either going to be Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, John Constantine, Hellblazer, or for the wild card, Garth Ennis's Preacher.
Ooh. Never let it be said that Jacob has learned nothing about my taste over the last 47 episodes of this podcast. Right ballpark on all fronts as far as guesses go. It's not Preacher. We're not quite ready for that yet.
Okay, good, because I think that might be too much.
Here's the thing: we're definitely doing Preacher someday. I don't think Sandman necessarily puts you in the right frame of mind for Preacher. To be fair, I don't think anything gets you in the right frame of mind for Preacher. Preacher is its own thing, and I love it, and it's wonderful. But everyone else also seems to know that I love my Swamp Thing. I love my Hellblazer. It's definitely one of those 2.
But which one?
Which one is the question? I don't know a way to like drum this up now because everyone is so sure of what I know and love, and your guys are right. It's fucking next time on Fresh Face Comics, we're talking about Saga of the Swamp Thing Volume 1 by Alan Moore.
Yes.
It's I think it's the first 8 issues of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. It's fucking great. It's also only our second ever Alan Moore thing we cover on the podcast.
We haven't done more.
We got to do more Alan Moore. So this is it. This is us getting back into Alan Moore. So yeah, let's fucking go. I'm so excited to talk about Alan Moore Swamp Thing with you.
Yes.
It is a transformative run. It is the reason that Vertigo exists.
It's also only our second pre-crisis series because it started in '82.
This is true.
The run started in '82. I know Swamp Thing. I think that because we started issue 20 something.
So I think it was 83 or 84, one of those 2. I forget exactly which. But yeah, that's that. I'm very excited to talk about that. That'll be next time. And that'll be episode 48. We have one more episode in the Vertigo block, then episode 49, and then a very special episode 50. And then then we're getting our first ever Marvel block on the podcast, which I'm so excited about. We have so many things to talk about. It feels like we're coming to a head with episode 50, but at the same time, there are so many other things that I cannot wait for us to explore on the podcast.
Yes,
we are still so early in your comic book journey. It feels.
Yes, I'm excited to see where this goes, and finally another Alan Moore.
Yeah,
finally.
Yeah. So yeah, I forget. Did you prematurely buy the box set already?
Yeah, I found it for cheap, so I got it.
Fucking. I can't with you.
What?
Jacob prematurely buys everything. He just assumes what runs we're reading on the podcast.
Here's the thing.
So he just buys everything.
I have begun to know Joey very well.
Well, look, we're coming up on Marvel soon. You're not going to know me at all.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Anyway,
excited for Marvel because I'm going to be on some of those episodes, I think.
I believe so. I forget exactly which ones we talked about already, but
Oh,
I'll look over those
I remember, but I
I'll look
can't
over
say
those
them out
messages
loud.
again. I will look over those messages again.
I remember what they were, but I mean, I can't say them out loud, so you know.
This is true. This is true. All right, let's begin to close things out. Plugs, all kinds of plugs. Marcus, what do you have to plug? What do you have to promote? What are you working on right now? Tell us what's going on in your life.
So basically just my YouTube channel, Sir Jedi Sentinel. I have 2 ongoing video series right now. Well, 3, but one's more casual and when I decide to do it. So one, I am reviewing Big Finish's Doctor Who 60th anniversary special Once in Future. I am reviewing the monthly releases as they come out. But the other big thing is I'm doing a weekly series called Batman Be Vlogged. I grew up with the Bruce Timm animated DC universe. Some of them I don't remember, so essentially I'm watching Batman Beyond for the first time. And I'm releasing those videos weekly. When this one comes out, let me do some quick math. So this week your guys' Green Arrow episode is coming out, right? The week we're
That comes out tomorrow
Yes.
as of recording.
Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, this is out the 31st.
So yeah, this week, this week, the week we're recording this, I'm releasing my review for the episode Babel. Next week will be the week after that will be Terry's friend dates a robot. So the week this comes out will be the episode Eyewitness.
There we go. I love Batman Beyond so much. Oh my god.
We need to when we do a bonus episode on that, because I know we're going to eventually.
We're totally
we need to
going
get Mark.
You just need to get on your fucking animated universe, Jacob.
I'm working on it. I've been
get
working
on that
on
shit.
It.
It has been so long since our last one. You gotta.
I'm making decent progress. It's just
okay.
I was out of town all this weekend, and I haven't had time to watch anything.
Okay.
There's a lot of media. It takes a while to catch up.
Thank you, Mason. Thank you.
No, don't listen to Mason.
And that's why I have not read The Wheel of Time before yet.
See, there you go. Okay.
Or Green Lantern by Jeff Johns, Omnibus 1 yet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I half agree with Mason. Anyway, Mason, speaking of, what do you have going on in your life right now?
Well, you know, so I don't have a very prominent online, I guess, life right now. I mean, you could follow me on Twitter, which is the GD256, a very confusing name to try to get new people to say out loud for the first time.
I will leave it in the description as always. That'll be down there. I also say that at pretty much every single podcast episode, so the people have heard it enough.
That's fair, yeah. And like, you know, oh yeah, because I ask the most ridiculous questions for every single episode you guys ever do. But yeah, like if you want to like follow me there, then I don't tweet as much as I used to, but like every so often I'll think of like some stupid joke or like some sincere opinion or point that I have, and I just throw them all under the same like lowercase format and just hope people like them. So if you're interested, then you can go see that.
It's true. Mason is a funny guy, and you should follow him.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Marcus, I realized I totally cut you off. I feel like you had more to say. Did you?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, all right, cool. Thank you so much.
Sorry.
I just
from Twitter. I just plugged the YouTube.
Yeah, your Twitter will be linked, and I'll leave your YouTube linked and all that. So, Jacob, what do you have going on?
So, my blog has still been reviewing Russell Davies' era of Doctor Who. I'm not entirely sure where we are with this one. I think I'll have, when this comes out, I will have just released a review on Human Nature and the Family of Blood.
The episodes?
Yes. I've also been reviewing Star Trek, the original series, as has Joey. In video form, I've been doing it in writing. We'll have both just released our thoughts on the episode Friday's Child.
Friday's Child, yes.
That'll be fun.
And, yeah.
Also, various book reviews and things.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'll have been reviewing when this episode comes out, because those aren't nearly as planned.
Yeah. But yeah, your link tree, which is a link to literally everything that you just mentioned, it'll be down in the description. It'll be there. So yeah. And I guess for me, subscribe to Blood Donut Studios if you haven't already. There's been a really nice subscriber influx on there recently at the time of recording this. So that's really nice.
There's a non-zero chance that by the time this comes out, you'll have passed 300 subscribers.
It's possible, but I'm not getting my hopes up. So, otherwise, be sure to like and rate the podcast and leave a review or a comment, wherever you're listening to us on. Be sure to do that. It helps a lot. Be sure to share the podcast around wherever you're listening to us. It means a lot. Also, like Jacob mentioned, I'm releasing Star Trek reviews weekly with my brother. You could also go support my coffee, which is in my link tree and everything, to get those Star Trek videos early.
Also, Night Terrors.
Night Terrors, Fresh Face One Shots. Yeah. So Night Terrors is going on right now. It's the big DC summer event. It's a big horror themed nightmare shit. It's fucking awesome. Featuring Wesley Dodds. Were mentioned on this yeah, so that's that, and what else? Oh yeah, Breaking Brian. This comes out on the 31st. So we just released our review on Better Call Saul season 1 recently. So we're continuing those monthly reviews for the rest of the year. August through December is Better Call Saul seasons 2 through 6, and of course we have reviewed all of Breaking Bad already, all 5 seasons of that, as well as the movie El Camino. So that's all there. And I guess that's about it.
That's about it.
Real quick. I'll ask you this on recording. So if the answer is no, then this will provide a fun little teaser. Should we talk about the thing that Joey and Jacob and I might be doing?
Oh yeah.
You know what? Yeah, I think so. I think we could record that sometime in the near future. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Mason, you announce it. You do it. You haven't.
Oh, okay. Thanks. So one of my favorite things that I did with these guys back when we were all on Security Kitchen was commentary tracks. We would do commentary tracks for various classic Doctor Who stories. One of the most memorable ones for me was always The Two Doctors. Like, I really enjoyed that one.
Where Brian literally died.
Oh yeah, it was great. It was fun. And so I had always wanted to do that sort of thing again. And a while ago on Discord, I brought up this idea because it might have been after we recorded the Green Lantern video, actually.
I think so, actually, yeah.
And I was like, hey, I mean, I'd like to do, commentary tracks again, because those were fun. And there are a lot of really good and really bad movies that a lot of us haven't seen. And on the channel, sometime soon, we're not sure when, but we are, I think the first of the commentary tracks we are going to be doing is for Steel.
Starring Shaquille O'Neal. I think we joked about it on the podcast, right? It was
we joked about it way back when the podcast
was during
first
one
started.
of the Death of Superman episodes, way back when the Fresh Face Comics was in the single digits of episodes. We joked that we were going to do a Steel commentary, and it just never amounted to anything. So, but here we are. We're actually doing it. Me, Jacob, and Mason, and it's going to be fucking insane. I'm sure. I saw it once a very long time ago. I know for a fact it's bad. I just don't remember much about it.
And I've never seen it.
You've never seen it. I know Jacob's never seen it. It's gonna be fucking wild. So yeah.
I watched the Chris Stuckman review of it, so I know a bit about the story and certain parts of it, but I've never seen the full movie.
Yeah. So yeah, that's gonna be really fun. Oh my god, I can't wait for that. But yeah, I guess that about does it. Also on my link tree will be in the description below, as well as the book that we covered on this podcast, Sandman, Preludes, and Nocturnes, as well as our next book on the podcast, Saga of the Swamp Thing Volume 1, which I'll leave the single volume and I guess the big box set that they have, box set volumes. I'll have both of those down there in the description. Those will all be in Amazon links, and you can check those out and buy them if you want, or whatever you want to keep up with the podcast. And I guess that actually
really
does it. Wow. It's almost like having guests on the podcast makes the episodes longer, isn't it?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. I guess that about does it. Thank you all so much for listening. Jacob, you want to sign us out?
Yeah, thank you all so much for listening. And until next time, this has been Jacob Licklider,
Joey Morgan,
Marcus
Mason Peterson.
Goodbye!